Hey guys, tonight we are stepping into the private world of the Tudor Queen, a world of cloth of gold gowns, candlelit galleries, carved four-poster beds, jewelled initials, loyal ladies, solemn ambassadors, and enormous portraits in which nobody appears to have encountered a comfortable chair. From a distance it looks magnificent. You live in a palace. Musicians play while you eat. Servants carry your sleeves behind you. Your necklace contains enough precious stones to destabilize a modest European economy. Everywhere you go, people bow, doors open, trumpets sound, and several exhausted men in velvet announce that your arrival is the most important thing that has happened all week. But once you get a little closer, the picture changes. Because being a Tudor queen was not primarily about wearing a crown and looking thoughtfully out of windows. It was a full-time political position with no contract, no privacy, no guaranteed retirement, and one extremely important performance target involving the production of a healthy son. Your marriage might be negotiated before you had met your husband. Your appearance could be assessed by foreign diplomats. Your monthly cycle could become international news. Your pregnancies belong to the state. Your household belonged to competing political factions. And your husband might respond to marital disappointment by asking several lawyers to reconsider the meaning of marriage itself. It was, in other words, less like becoming a princess and more like accepting a senior management position inside a family business where the family business controlled England and occasionally removed senior management. But first, a huge, genuine thank you to the viewer who suggested tonight's topic. You know who you are, and honestly, you have chosen one of history's most beautiful traps. Suggestions like this genuinely shape what we explore on the channel, and I always appreciate them. If you enjoy these long, quiet journeys into the parts of history that costume dramas tend to place discreetly behind a tapestry, please like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly want to. No pressure at all, it simply helps the channel more than you might imagine. And leave a comment telling me where you are listening from and what time it is there. Somewhere, at this exact moment, a perfectly sensible adult is listening to Tudor reproductive politics at 2:17 in the morning. That is the community we have built, and I think we should be proud of it. The channel is also on Spotify, so you can listen there whenever you would rather fall asleep without the faint glow of Henry VIII staring at you from a television screen. The link is in the description. Now dim the lights. Put a fan on if you have one. Pull the blanket up, let your shoulders drop. Find the cold side of the pillow before someone else claims it. Get truly, genuinely comfortable. Because you are about to feel extremely grateful that your relationships are not being discussed by the Imperial Ambassador. Before we begin, let us sit with a few questions. What did a Tudor queen actually do from the moment she woke up? Did she ever get 5 minutes alone? Or was privacy considered suspiciously modern? How many people were required to dress her? Could she choose what she ate? Was her food tasted for poison? Or was that mostly dramatic optimism? How often did she bathe? What happened when she became pregnant? Who was allowed into the room when she gave birth? Could she refuse the king? Could she disagree with him? Could she have friends without those friends immediately forming a political faction? What happened when the king stopped visiting her chambers? How quickly did the court notice? Did anyone tell her directly? Or did she simply realize that 3 of her ladies had begun smiling too carefully? And most importantly, how did you sleep when the man beside you controlled the law, the church, the succession, your household income, and quite possibly the future location of your head? Tonight, you will not become one particular Tudor queen. Their backgrounds and experiences were too different for that. Catherine of Aragon arrived as a Spanish princess. Anne Boleyn came to power through courtship and political upheaval. Jane Seymour entered a marriage already carrying the full weight of the succession. Anne of Cleves crossed the sea as a diplomatic bride. Catherine Howard was very young and dangerously unprepared. Catherine Parr had already survived 2 husbands before marrying the most hazardous one available. Mary and Elizabeth would eventually rule as queens in their own right, facing an entirely different problem, convincing a deeply patriarchal political world that a woman could possess royal authority without borrowing it from a man. Instead, you're going to walk through the shared architecture of Tudor queenship. You will experience the ceremonies, expectations, dangers, comforts, humiliations, privileges, and impossible contradictions that surrounded women close to the crown. Congratulations! You have just woken up in England. The year is 1536. Henry VIII has already changed the religious settlement of the kingdom for the sake of his marriage, and the marriage is now experiencing what palace officials would describe as difficulties. You are wearing silk, you are surrounded by servants, everyone calls you your grace, and everyone is watching your stomach. 1. Your childhood begins as someone else's treaty. First, let us go back to the beginning. You are born into a room filled with linen, candlelight, prayer, and adults already discussing your future as though you have missed an important meeting. The midwife confirms that you are healthy. Your mother survives, bells may ring, messengers may ride, and somewhere a secretary begins drafting letters to relatives who are less interested in your nose than in what your existence might eventually secure. Because you are not merely a baby, you are a possibility. If you are born into a royal or powerful noble family, your name enters the diplomatic imagination almost immediately. Kings need allies, dynasties need heirs, borders need calming, trade routes need protecting, old quarrels need covering with weddings. You, currently occupied with sleeping and making small determined noises, may one day be expected to solve all of this by marrying someone in another country. It is considerable responsibility for a person who cannot yet hold up her own head. You have swaddling bands, embroidered coverings, attendants, and perhaps a wet nurse chosen with intense seriousness. Her health, diet, temperament, and moral reputation matter because people believe these qualities may pass through her milk. Everyone wants you fed properly because dynastic infants have an unfortunate habit of dying. The future of an alliance should ideally survive teething. You are watched closely. A cough matters, a rash matters, whether you gain weight matters. If a foreign marriage is being considered, ambassadors may want to know whether you are strong, cheerful, obedient, and likely to mature into the kind of princess who can cross the sea without creating a diplomatic emergency. Nobody writes, "She is throwing porridge at a spaniel." They write that you show excellent spirit. By the age of 2 or 3, your future may already have changed several times. One proposed husband dies, another becomes politically inconvenient. A third is suddenly more attractive because his father controls a useful port. Treaties shift, popes object. Your engagement can appear, disappear, and reappear with a different name attached while you continue learning which spoon belongs in your mouth. Catherine of Aragon was promised to Arthur, Prince of Wales, as part of an alliance between England and Spain. Her marriage was the product of years of negotiation between powerful families strengthening their position in Europe. Anne of Cleves would later be considered for Henry VIII through another diplomatic arrangement, supported by portraits, reports, and the search for Protestant allies. Your family speaks warmly about the prince chosen for you. They praise his lineage, prospects, education, and noble character, most of which they know from letters written by men whose employment depends upon sounding encouraging. A portrait may arrive. You are shown a painted boy standing very straight in expensive clothes. He looks solemn because portrait painters rarely captured princes stealing a pastry. You are told that one day you may be queen. This sounds splendid because you are 5. You imagine jewels, music, horses, and rooms full of sweet things. Nobody explains that becoming queen may require leaving your parents, siblings, language, food, climate, servants, and every familiar room you have known. Nobody mentions that the husband in the portrait may grow into a stranger, an invalid, a rival, or a man who believes affection is best expressed through policy. For now, you learn to bow. You learn to smile when introduced. Adults become pleased when you repeat a greeting in another language. They call you precious, beloved, and promising. All of this is true. It is also true that somewhere nearby, folded inside a locked chest, there is probably a document explaining exactly what you are worth. 2. You are educated to impress people who may invade later. Now let us talk about lessons. You are a child, but nobody at court has mistaken childhood for a reason to leave you alone. A future queen must be educated, polished, devout, graceful, and useful in languages, while most modern children are still losing shoes. Your mornings begin with tutors, governesses, chaplains, musicians, dancing masters, and women who correct your posture with the persistence of people protecting a diplomatic investment. You learn to read because royal women must understand letters, scripture, household accounts, and reports sent by ambassadors. You learn to write because one day your handwriting may carry requests for money, pleas for mercy, instructions to servants, or messages intended to prevent two kingdoms from becoming annoyed with one another. Your penmanship is expected to remain elegant even when the content involves war, betrayal, or a husband who has stopped answering. Latin matters, French matters. Depending on your intended marriage, Spanish or Italian may matter too. Catherine of Aragon received a strong humanist education and could communicate in Latin. Mary and Elizabeth Tudor were trained to a level that impressed scholars. Elizabeth became fluent in several languages and translated complex religious and classical works. This was admired, though always with the faint surprise reserved for a woman who had done something inconveniently well. Religion sits at the centre of your education. You memorize prayers, study scripture, attend services, learn the lives of saints, and absorb the doctrines your family considers correct. This may become awkward later, because Tudor England develops a habit of changing which doctrines are officially correct. A lesson that earns praise in one reign may attract suspicion in the next. You are therefore taught faith, but you also learn the quieter skill of knowing when faith has entered the room wearing politics. Music is essential. You sing, play instruments, and learn to recognize the difference between piety and a courtier performing piety near an open door. Dancing matters because a princess must move through public space without appearing hurried, tired, or aware that several hundred people are examining her ankles. You practice steps, turns, and bows deep enough to show respect without becoming trapped in your own clothing. Needlework is not treated as a hobby. It demonstrates patience, discipline, virtue, and the proper occupation of female hands. You embroider religious scenes, heraldic symbols, and flowers while listening to readings or conversation. The finished work may become a gift, an altar cloth, or evidence that you have not spent the afternoon forming opinions. Household management receives serious attention. A queen may supervise estates, servants, kitchens, wardrobes, charitable giving, and a household of hundreds. You learn how provisions are ordered, expenses recorded, gifts distributed, and rank determines who stands closest to whom. This is not domestic simplicity, it is administration in velvet sleeves. You also study history and genealogy, especially the history that proves your family ought to possess whatever it currently possesses. You memorize ancestors, claims, marriages, rival lines, and the delicate reasons certain cousins should never be seated together. European royal families are connected through a web of marriages so dense that genealogy begins to resemble a warning. Throughout all of this, reports are being made about you. A visitor notes that you are intelligent, modest, healthy, musical, obedient, tall for your age, or perhaps not quite tall enough. These descriptions may be sent abroad to people considering you as a bride. Your education is therefore both learning and a public audition. You finish the day tired, accomplished, and able to greet a foreign ambassador in 3 languages. He is delighted. He may still invade later. 3. Your marriage is discussed before you understand marriage. It is time for your first engagement. You may be 6 years old. You may be 4. In particularly efficient families, you may still be learning not to eat wax from the chapel candles when a group of ambassadors begins discussing which prince you ought to marry. This is not considered premature. It is considered good planning. Royal marriage in Tudor Europe is diplomacy performed with rings. Kings need allies, borders need protection, merchants want access to ports, and ambitious dynasties would prefer everyone to stop invading for at least long enough to finish dinner. A daughter can help accomplish all of this simply by being born into the correct family and eventually standing beside the correct man. Your personal preferences remain a charming theoretical concern. The proposed match may be announced with great excitement. Your future husband is described as noble, handsome, virtuous, healthy, and unusually gifted in every quality that cannot be checked from several hundred miles away. His portrait may arrive later. It shows a solemn little boy in velvet, standing beside a table and looking as though he has recently been informed that childhood is administratively inconvenient. You are encouraged to admire him. The adults around you discuss bloodlines, territory, military support, trade privileges, and dowry payments. The word love may appear, but mainly in ceremonial language about the affection that will surely unite 2 kingdoms. Nobody has spoken to the kingdoms privately. A formal betrothal can be legally significant. Promises exchanged in childhood may later be challenged, confirmed, postponed, or dissolved. Canon law takes marriage seriously, but European politics takes changing its mind equally seriously. If the alliance remains useful, everyone praises its sacred permanence. If the alliance becomes inconvenient, several lawyers discover important concerns about consent, kinship, or wording. Because royal families are closely related, a papal dispensation may be needed. This is permission to marry despite belonging within a prohibited degree of kinship. European dynasties have spent generations marrying one another so enthusiastically that finding an entirely unrelated prince would require expanding the guest list well beyond respectable society. Negotiations may continue for years. Your dowry must be agreed. Your future financial protection must be arranged. Officials decide what money, jewels, plate, lands, clothing, and household goods will travel with you. They also decide what income you should receive if your husband dies, assuming his relatives do not suddenly develop a creative interpretation of the agreement. The match may still collapse. A prince dies, a king changes sides, a treaty fails, a more useful daughter becomes available. Your father quarrels with your future father-in-law over money. The Pope objects. An ambassador reports that the groom is unhealthy. Another insists that he is perfectly healthy, apart from an illness nobody is to mention. You are then informed that the marriage will not happen. This may be disappointing if you have grown attached to the idea. It may be a relief if the portrait was particularly severe. Either way, you are expected to accept the change with grace because the prince was never entirely yours. He belonged to the negotiations. Soon another name appears. Catherine of Aragon was promised to Arthur, eldest son of Henry VII, as part of an alliance between England and Spain. Years of preparation, diplomacy, and financial negotiations surrounded the match. When Arthur died shortly after their marriage, Catherine's future became entangled in another proposed union, this time with his younger brother Henry. Questions surrounding her first marriage would later help reshape English religion and politics. For you, however, all of that lies ahead. At present, you continue your lessons while strangers decide where you will live, which language your children will speak, and whose enemies you will inherit. You learn your future husband's titles. You practice writing his name. You pray for his health, because his survival now affects yours. You do not yet understand marriage. Fortunately, everyone else has already arranged it. 4. Crossing the sea means leaving your first life behind. Sooner or later, the negotiations end, the contracts are sealed, and the adults who have spent years discussing your future finally decide that you should begin living it. Chests appear in your chambers. Seamstresses make last adjustments. Clerks prepare inventories of gowns, jewels, devotional books, silver plate, bedding, medicines, and household objects that must travel with you. Everything is counted because royal luggage is not merely luggage. It is evidence that your family has sent you abroad with the dignity expected of your rank. You are leaving home. This may mean crossing a border by road, but for many royal brides it means crossing the sea, which is less poetic once the ship begins moving. The harbour smells of salt, wet rope, tar, fish, horses, smoke, and the unmistakable anxiety of several hundred people attempting to load expensive furniture onto wooden vessels. Crowds gather to watch. Bells ring. Standards lift in the wind. Your family embraces you before witnesses, which means even grief must observe court etiquette. You may cry, but not so violently that anyone interprets your sorrow as an objection to the marriage. You are expected to appear tender, brave, obedient, and pleased to strengthen the alliance. This is difficult when your mother is disappearing behind a wall of waving hats. Your travelling household surrounds you. Ladies, servants, chaplains, physicians, musicians, secretaries, guards, and officials accompany the procession. Some have known you since childhood. Their familiar voices soften the strangeness of the journey, though you know that not all of them will be allowed to remain once you arrive. Foreign courts often want a new bride to adopt local customs and depend upon local attendants. Your husband's counsellors may consider your old servants too loyal to your family, too foreign in their habits, or simply too numerous and expensive. The people who crossed the sea with you may therefore be dismissed shortly after delivering you safely into a new life. You try not to think about this while the coastline recedes. The voyage itself depends upon the weather, and Tudor weather has no respect for treaties. Winds change, ships are delayed, waves strike the hull, timber creaks throughout the night. Sailors shout above decks while below you discover that silk gowns and seasickness do not form a dignified partnership. There is little privacy. Cabins are cramped by royal standards, which means they are merely larger than everyone else's cramped cabins. Bedding becomes damp. Food is salted, preserved, or increasingly suspicious. Fresh water must be rationed. The chamber pot moves when the ship does, introducing an element of calculation to every ordinary bodily function. Your attendants assure you that the sea is not unusually rough. This is never reassuring. Catherine of Aragon endured a difficult journey to England in 1501. An earlier attempt to sail was disrupted by storms, and when she finally reached English shores, she entered a kingdom whose language, climate, food, and customs differed from those of her Spanish childhood. She had come to marry Arthur, Prince of Wales, and to embody an alliance arranged long before either of them understood what marriage required. Anne of Cleves crossed from continental Europe nearly 4 decades later. She travelled through the Low Countries and across the Channel to meet Henry VIII, carrying expectations formed from diplomatic reports and a painted portrait. She entered England as a future queen and soon discovered that royal welcomes could conceal rapidly developing complications. When your ship finally approaches land, the new coastline appears through grey light and mist. Small boats come out to meet you. Officials wait at the port. Musicians prepare. Local nobles arrange themselves according to rank, all eager to observe the foreign bride whose health, clothing, manners, and face have already occupied several months of correspondence. You step ashore carefully. People cheer. Speeches begin. Gifts are presented. You smile at unfamiliar words and recognize only fragments of what is being said. Your new subjects study you with curiosity. Your household studies them in return. Somewhere nearby, an ambassador is already composing a report on how gracefully you descended from the ship. Behind you lies the country where you learn to speak, pray, eat, dance, and understand the rhythm of ordinary days. Ahead stands a court that expects you to become someone else without appearing to change at all. The trumpets sound. There is no ship waiting to take you home. 5. The king inspects the wife. He has already agreed to marry. Let us meet your future husband. This should be the romantic part. The treaty has been negotiated, the dowry discussed, the dispensation secured, and several men have signed documents declaring that this marriage is both wise and pleasing to God. You have crossed roads, borders, and perhaps an entire sea to reach him. All that remains is for the two of you to look at one another and behave as though none of this was arranged by committees. Your future husband may already know a surprising amount about you. Ambassadors have described your height, complexion, hair, manners, health, education, and apparent fertility with the calm precision of men inspecting a valuable horse. They report whether you dance well, speak clearly, laugh too loudly, show signs of illness, or possess any feature that might cause disappointment when viewed without candlelight. Portraits have also been exchanged. This sounds romantic until you remember that the painting functions as diplomatic evidence. The artist must make you recognizable, attractive, healthy, modest, and politically useful, ideally at the same time. Too much flattery risks anger when the real person arrives. Too much honesty risks ending the negotiations before the paint dries. Hans Holbein the Younger produced portraits of possible brides for Henry VIII, including Anne of Cleves. His likeness of Anne helped support the match, although Henry's later complaints were directed less at the painting than at the entire situation. The portrait had done what a portrait could. It could not arrange chemistry, conversation, or a king's mood. Then comes the meeting. Henry decided to surprise Anne before their formal reception by approaching her in disguise at Rochester. Courtly tradition occasionally celebrated such encounters, in which the disguised lover was supposedly recognized by instinct. Unfortunately, instinct had not been included in Anne's travel instructions. A large, unfamiliar man entered her chamber and embraced or kissed her. Anne did not respond with the delighted recognition Henry expected. She had never met him. She was newly arrived in a foreign country. She did not understand the game, and the king had deliberately removed every sign that would have told her who he was. Henry took this badly. He withdrew offended, later complaining about her appearance and declaring that he did not like her. Anne had failed an examination whose rules were known only to the examiner. This is a difficult way to begin a marriage, though still more efficient than discovering the problem after 20 years. You are expected to avoid such errors. When the king appears, you must show warmth without boldness, humility without fear, and pleasure without looking relieved. You bow or curtsy. You speak through an interpreter if necessary. Everyone watches your face while pretending to admire the hangings. The king is inspected too, although nobody calls it that. You notice his age, size, voice, health, temper, and the way other people behave around him. If he is charming, you feel relief. If he is cold, you remain gracious. If he looks nothing like his portrait, this is apparently your private problem. You may be a teenager meeting a grown man who already possesses children, mistresses, illnesses, and firm opinions about obedience. You may have been told he is handsome and discover that the description was prepared several years and several banquets ago. Still, the ceremony continues. Gifts are exchanged, music plays, courtiers smile with professional commitment. An ambassador begins composing his report before you have finished your first conversation. You have finally met the man whose name has shaped your life for years. He has looked you over. The alliance is now waiting to see whether he approves. 6. The marriage contract arrives before the marriage. Before the wedding comes the paperwork. There is a great deal of it. Your marriage may be praised in sermons as a sacred union blessed by God, but before anyone reaches the chapel, several rooms of lawyers must first decide what happens to the silver. The negotiations begin long before the ceremony. Your family, your future husband's family, royal advisors, church officials, ambassadors, treasurers, and men who appear to have been born holding sealed documents gather to discuss the terms. They argue over money, property, jewels, servants, titles, inheritance, and what should happen if someone dies before completing the arrangement. This is romantic in the broadest possible sense. Your dowry is central. It may include money, plate, jewels, clothing, land, or promises of future payment. A large dowry reflects the status of your family and helps make the match attractive. It also creates opportunities for disagreement, because royal families are excellent at promising money and slightly less enthusiastic about delivering it. Catherine of Aragon's marriage negotiations involved a substantial dowry from her parents, Isabella of Castile and Ferdinand of Aragon. Payments became a persistent source of tension. After Prince Arthur died, the unresolved portions of the dowry complicated plans for Catherine to marry his younger brother Henry. She remained in England for years while diplomats debated her future and accountants behaved as though the central tragedy was an incorrectly transferred sum. You may be a princess, but your financial value is still being entered into columns. Your dower must also be arranged. This is the property or income intended to support you if your husband dies before you. Without a secure settlement, widowhood could leave you dependent upon your husband's heir, his relatives, or the generosity of a government that may suddenly remember several urgent reasons not to pay you. The lawyers therefore identify lands, rents, estates, and revenues that should belong to you as queen. These may fund your household, clothing, servants, charity, and travel. On parchment, the arrangements can look extremely reassuring. The difficulty comes later, when someone must persuade the people controlling the land to release the money. Then there is the matter of kinship. European royal families are connected to one another through generations of strategic marriage, which means you and your future husband may share an ancestor closer than church law normally permits. Officials inspect family trees. Bishops offer opinions. Canon lawyers examine whether a papal dispensation is required. The family tree is brought out and studied carefully. It resembles a hedge that has been growing inward. Previous promises must also be investigated. A childhood betrothal, an earlier marriage, or a spoken agreement made in front of witnesses may create legal difficulties. Consent matters under canon law, although the pressure surrounding royal consent can make the word feel unusually flexible. You may technically agree while surrounded by relatives, confessors, diplomats, and the knowledge that refusing could damage relations between two kingdoms. Everyone waits for your answer with great patience. There is only one acceptable answer. The contract also sets expectations concerning your household. How many servants may accompany you? Which of your old attendants can remain? Who pays their wages? Which jewels belong to you personally, and which belong to the crown? What happens to gifts received during the marriage? Even your wardrobe may become part of the legal discussion because cloth of gold is too expensive to be treated casually. Once the terms are agreed, copies are produced, witnessed, sealed, and dispatched. Messengers carry them across roads and seas. Rulers confirm their promises. Church officials approve the necessary dispensations. Preparations for the ceremony can finally begin. You may be shown parts of the agreement, especially if you are educated and old enough to understand it. You may even have some influence, though this depends upon your family, your rank, and the urgency of the alliance. More often, the essential decisions are made around you. The document explains where you will live, what you will bring, what you may receive, and how you will be supported if the husband you have not yet married dies. It cannot explain whether he will be kind. That detail has been left out of the contract. 7. The wedding turns your private future into public theatre. It is your wedding day, although the word private has already left the building. You wake before the palace has properly warmed. Fires are being fed, candles trimmed, corridors swept, and kitchens driven into the sort of controlled panic that occurs whenever several hundred important people expect to be fed at the same time. Outside your chamber, servants move in quick, careful patterns. Inside, your ladies begin turning you into a political event. Every layer matters. Linen, petticoats, kirtle, gown, sleeves, hood, girdle, jewels. The fabrics have been chosen not merely because they are beautiful, but because they announce wealth, rank, family, and expectation. Cloth of gold catches the candlelight. Pearls suggest purity. Heraldic colours remind everyone which dynasty has just agreed to attach itself to another. Your body disappears beneath symbolism. The room fills with women adjusting folds, tightening fastenings, smoothing velvet, and checking that nothing sits crooked. You are allowed to be nervous, but only in a controlled and graceful manner. Pale cheeks may be admired. Trembling hands are less convenient, especially when rings are involved. Meanwhile, the palace fills with nobles arranging themselves according to precedence. Rank determines who enters first, who stands nearest, who carries what, and who may feel insulted for the next 20 years because a cousin was placed one pace closer to the chapel. Tudor ceremony is designed to demonstrate order. It also provides aristocrats with excellent opportunities to resent one another. The procession begins. Musicians play. Officers carry staffs and symbols of office. Bishops wait in embroidered vestments. Guards line the route. Courtiers turn to watch you pass, studying your face for signs of joy, fear, pride, illness, reluctance, or anything else worth repeating before supper. You walk carefully because royal dignity is difficult to recover after falling over your own train. At the chapel, your future husband waits. Perhaps you know him well. Perhaps you have spoken only a handful of times. Perhaps you met him yesterday after travelling across Europe and are still privately adjusting to the fact that his portrait omitted several important dimensions. The service follows the rites of the church as they stand in that particular reign. England's religious forms will change repeatedly during the Tudor century, but marriage remains a solemn public act. Vows are spoken before witnesses, hands are joined, a ring is placed upon your finger. Prayers are offered for fidelity, harmony, and children, especially children, because nobody has endured years of diplomacy merely to see whether the two of you enjoy similar music. Your consent is requested. In theory, this matters. Medieval and Tudor church law recognizes that valid marriage requires the consent of both parties. In practice, your answer is given while families, ambassadors, clergy, councillors, and the political interests of two realms stand nearby listening. You say yes. Everyone is relieved that free choice has produced the expected result. After the ceremony comes celebration. Bells ring, trumpets sound, crowds gather. Wine may flow from fountains during particularly grand festivities. Tables bend beneath meat, fish, pies, sweet dishes, spices, and decorative creations that have required the kitchen staff to abandon sleep as a personal ambition. You dine before an audience, toasts are made, poems praise the marriage, musicians perform, courtiers dance. Every gesture is watched because your behaviour now reflects the success of the alliance. You must appear delighted but not foolish, affectionate but not improper, regal but not cold. Eventually, attention turns toward the wedding chamber. A ceremonial bedding may accompany an important marriage. Courtiers and attendants escort the couple, make jokes of varying quality, offer blessings, and confirm that both bride and groom have reached the room intended for the completion of the union. Full public witnessing of the private act is not required, but the expectation surrounding consummation is very real. A marriage can later be challenged on the question of whether it was completed physically. Servants remember, ladies observe, lawyers may ask years later. At last the chamber door closes. The music fades along the corridor. The guests continue celebrating. Across Europe, ambassadors will report that the ceremony was splendid, the bride gracious and the alliance secure. You are finally alone with your husband. It is the most private moment of your life. History has already taken notes. 8. A coronation is granted, delayed, or quietly forgotten. Now comes the crown. Or at least, it may come. Becoming the king's wife does not automatically mean that anyone will place one upon your head. A coronation is expensive, politically significant, and difficult to arrange without first deciding whether the marriage is expected to last. This is not written anywhere in the service. It is simply understood. If the ceremony goes ahead, preparations begin months in advance. Officials plan routes, seating, processions, costumes, pageants, meals, security, and the precise order in which several hundred important people will enter a church. Goldsmiths inspect jewels. Tailors construct robes. Heralds review family emblems. Clergy prepare prayers that present your arrival as part of God's orderly design, rather than the conclusion of several years of aggressive negotiation. London is decorated for the occasion. Buildings along the procession route are draped with cloth. Temporary stages rise in the streets. Actors, musicians, schoolchildren, and civic officials prepare speeches praising your beauty, virtue, lineage, wisdom, fertility, and every other quality expected of a queen who may still be learning where the palace stores the clean towels. Anne Boleyn received an especially elaborate coronation in 1533. Henry VIII needed the ceremony to present her not merely as his new wife, but as the legitimate queen carrying the hoped-for heir. She travelled through London in magnificent procession, surrounded by heraldry and pageants designed to connect her with biblical women, classical virtue, and royal destiny. Public ceremony was being used to make a controversial marriage look inevitable. This is one of monarchy's more dependable skills. On the morning of your coronation, your attendants dress you in layers of ceremonial clothing. The fabrics are rich enough to support a small regional economy. Velvet, satin, ermine, cloth of gold, embroidery, and jewels accumulate around you until walking becomes an act of faith. Your hair may be worn loose beneath the crown, a traditional sign associated with queenship and maidenly purity, although the accuracy of the second suggestion may depend upon how far the wedding celebrations progressed. Your robes trail behind you. Ladies and officers lift, arrange, and carry portions of the outfit because royal dignity has become too heavy for one person to manage independently. The procession moves toward the abbey. Bells ring. Crowds press into the streets. Incense drifts beneath painted ceilings. Choirs sing. Nobles stand according to rank and privately evaluate whether they have been positioned correctly. You walk through the centre of all this carrying the knowledge that one poorly judged step could become the most memorable part of the day. During the ceremony, you swear the appropriate oaths. Holy oil is placed upon you. Clergy bless you. Royal ornaments are presented. Then the crown is lifted and lowered onto your head. It is heavier than it looks. This is partly because it is made of precious metal and stones. It is also because everyone present expects it to produce a son. Once crowned, you are no longer simply the king's wife. You have been publicly anointed and presented as queen before God, court, and country. The ceremony strengthens your status and gives your position a sacred quality that cannot be removed without some awkward theological discussion, which does not mean it cannot be removed. Catherine of Aragon was crowned jointly with Henry in 1509 and remained deeply attached to the authority and legitimacy that ceremony confirmed. When Henry later attempted to end their marriage, Catherine refused to surrender the title of queen. To her, the marriage had been lawful, sacramental, and publicly recognised. A king might change his affection. He could not simply change the past. Not every wife receives the same honour. Jane Seymour was never crowned. Her coronation was discussed and postponed, possibly because of plague and the desire to wait until she had produced an heir. She gave birth to Edward in 1537 and died soon afterward. The ceremony never happened. Anne of Cleves was not crowned during her brief marriage. Catherine Howard was not crowned either. Catherine Parr married Henry when he was older, ill, and already well beyond presenting every new marriage as the radiant beginning of a dynasty. She too remained uncrowned. A missing coronation can therefore mean delay, uncertainty, expense, illness, political caution, or a husband who has decided not to invest too heavily in the opening ceremony. If yours does happen, the day ends with feasting, music, gifts, and public celebration. You return to the palace beneath the weight of new honours. Courtiers bow more deeply. Petitioners take greater interest. Your household grows in importance. At last, the crown is removed and placed carefully into someone else's hands. The pressure stays exactly where it was. 9. Your household is large enough to develop its own weather. Let us step inside your household. You might imagine that becoming queen means acquiring a few loyal ladies, one discreet secretary, and perhaps a servant whose only duty is to appear whenever you misplace a handkerchief. In reality, your household is an institution containing hundreds of people, several departments, its own accounts, and enough internal politics to govern a small but argumentative country. There are ladies-in-waiting, gentlewomen of the privy chamber, chamberers, maids, laundresses, seamstresses, nurses, chaplains, musicians, physicians, apothecaries, secretaries, guards, messengers, cooks, grooms, ushers, clerks, and officers responsible for checking whether other officers have completed the work assigned by a third group of officers. Your household does not merely serve you. It feeds you, dresses you, protects you, entertains you, manages your estates, carries your messages, organizes your worship, supervises your possessions, and ensures that you never open a door personally unless history has taken a very unusual turn. Its size reflects your dignity. A queen surrounded by many attendants appears powerful, wealthy, and properly royal. A queen with too few servants looks neglected, politically weak, or worryingly economical. Tudor monarchy does not admire efficiency when 3 additional velvet uniforms can demonstrate prestige. The people closest to you are usually noble women or daughters of important families. They help dress you, accompany you through the palace, sit beside you during recreation, and sleep within or near your chamber. They may read aloud, play music, embroider, carry messages, and provide companionship during the long hours when royal life becomes less like a pageant and more like waiting indoors while men discuss France. Some of these women become genuine friends. You share jokes, prayers, worries, illnesses, and the repetitive discomfort of court ceremony. They know when you are tired, when you have argued with the king, and when you are smiling only because an ambassador has entered the room. This knowledge makes them valuable. Their families understand this perfectly. Competition for places in your household is intense because serving the queen creates access. A father whose daughter stands beside you may hope for an office. A brother may seek military advancement. A cousin may require a favourable marriage. An uncle may have committed a minor act of treason that everyone would prefer to describe as enthusiasm. Appointments therefore become political decisions. Choose one woman and her family celebrates. Refuse another, and her relatives begin explaining that they never trusted your judgment. You wanted someone pleasant to help fasten your sleeves. You have accidentally altered the balance between 2 noble houses. Below the gentlewomen are the servants performing the physical labour that makes royal magnificence possible. They clean chambers, wash linen, carry water, empty close stools, prepare fires, beat dust from hangings, move furniture, and transport enormous quantities of clothing whenever the court changes residence. Their day begins before yours and ends after you retire. When you wake, the chamber has already been warmed. When you dress, the garments have been brushed, repaired, aired, and arranged. When you eat, food has passed through kitchens, corridors, guards, and serving officers before reaching your table. The effortless quality of royal life requires exhausting effort from everyone except the royal person. Your household also consumes money at a remarkable rate. Wages must be paid, food must be purchased, horses require fodder, clothing wears out, candles disappear nightly, gifts are expected. Repairs continue because palaces possess the useful ability to be both magnificent and constantly falling apart. Clerks maintain detailed accounts recording expenses down to individual lengths of cloth and deliveries of firewood. Household officers argue over budgets, unpaid bills, and suppliers who claim that the Crown has forgotten an invoice from 3 years ago. The Crown has not forgotten it. The Crown has simply developed a different understanding of urgency. Your household can also reveal your political and religious sympathies. The chaplains you appoint, books you circulate, scholars you support, and women you keep nearby are watched carefully. Anne Boleyn's household became associated with religious reform. Catherine Parr gathered educated and reform-minded figures around her. Catherine of Aragon's attendants remained connected to her cause during the struggle over her marriage. A household is therefore never only domestic. It is a community, a source of patronage, a centre of culture, and a possible faction waiting for someone nervous to give it a name. By evening, hundreds of people have worked to create the appearance that your day unfolded naturally. You are never alone. Fortunately, neither are your enemies. 10. Morning begins with several people watching you wake. It is morning. You open your eyes beneath a carved wooden canopy while the palace is already fully awake around you. Fires have been rekindled, bread is baking, horses are being fed. Servants are carrying water through corridors that were apparently designed by someone who distrusted direct routes. Somewhere, a clerk has begun recording expenses. You have not yet moved, and the government is already several hours into its day. Your bed is large, curtained, and magnificently decorated. It is also part of the public machinery of monarchy. The fabric, embroidery, and royal symbols announce your status to everyone permitted into the chamber. Even while sleeping, you are surrounded by evidence that you are important. You are also surrounded by people. Trusted attendants may have slept in the room, in an adjoining chamber, or on portable beds close enough to hear you call. A royal woman is rarely left entirely alone at night. This provides security, assistance, and the comforting certainty that any embarrassing noise you make while asleep can immediately enter the court's oral tradition. When you begin to stir, someone notices. Curtains are drawn back. A servant approaches the fire. Candles are extinguished or replaced. Your ladies speak quietly, waiting to discover whether you have slept well, whether you feel ill, and whether the expression on your face suggests that anyone should avoid mentioning France until after breakfast. Who enters first depends upon rank and household organisation. Access to your bedchamber is a privilege. The women permitted nearest your person are not simply servants. They are members of noble families, holders of respected offices, and potential channels through which favours, information, and requests can reach you. A position in your privy chamber allows a woman to observe your most ordinary moments. She sees you before the jewels, before the formal smile, and before the layers of clothing turn you into a public monument. She may know whether you argued with the king, whether he visited during the night, or whether you spent several hours awake staring at the canopy while considering the practical disadvantages of marriage. Her relatives would be fascinated by all of this. Morning news arrives carefully. A lady may tell you which visitors have reached court, who has fallen ill, which ambassador is requesting an audience, and whether the king is in a generous mood. Letters are waiting. Petitions have accumulated. Your officers need decisions concerning wages, household appointments, charitable gifts, and one persistent supplier who claims he has not been paid for candles delivered before the previous Christmas. You have been conscious for 6 minutes. People already require an answer. Before rising, you may pray beside the bed or receive assistance with private devotions. Religion structures the Tudor day, and a queen is expected to demonstrate proper piety. What counts as proper will change considerably depending upon the reign. The prayer book beside you may be entirely acceptable this year and politically adventurous 5 years later. Your attendants bring a robe or mantle to protect you from the cold. Tudor palaces contain magnificent tapestries, thick curtains, and enormous fireplaces, yet still possess a remarkable ability to feel like stone buildings in England. The fire warms the space immediately in front of it. The rest of the chamber maintains its independence. You leave the bed carefully. The floor may be covered with rush matting, carpets, or woven coverings depending upon the room and your wealth. Slippers wait nearby. A chamber servant prepares the close stool or removes the vessel used during the night, with the solemn discretion required when handling evidence that royalty remains biologically ordinary. There is no moment in which you simply wander toward a kitchen and make tea. Your morning follows an established sequence. Washing, dressing, prayer, food, correspondence, and appearances are coordinated by attendants who understand the rhythms of your household. If you wake late, dozens of schedules shift. If you wake ill, physicians are summoned and rumours begin. If you wake cheerful, ambitious courtiers may interpret it as an encouraging sign for their petitions. Your mood has become administrative information. At last, you stand beside the bed while your ladies prepare the next stage of the morning. Linen is unfolded. Water waits in a basin. Clothing is arranged in careful order. Beyond the chamber door, servants, petitioners, officers, and visitors prepare to enter your day. You have slept beneath a crown. Now everyone would like to know what you dreamed. 11. Washing requires water, linen, and lowered expectations. Let us deal with hygiene. You have left the bed, crossed the cold chamber, and arrived at a basin of water that has been carried upstairs by someone who began working before dawn. There is no tap, there is no shower. There is no cheerful burst of hot water arriving at the turn of a handle. There is a pitcher, a bowl, several cloths, and the quiet understanding that cleanliness must remain within the limits of available labour. The water may be warm if your servants have managed to heat it and bring it to you before it loses interest. More often, especially during winter, it is cool enough to make your skin reconsider the value of royal privilege. You wash your face and hands, perhaps your neck and arms, using a cloth, scented water, or soap. The soap may be made from animal fat and lye, which cleans effectively while offering the fragrance of a kitchen problem. Tudor people did wash. The popular image of everyone moving through life beneath an untouched layer of dirt is exaggerated. Hands were washed before and after meals, faces were cleaned, hair was combed, linen was changed. Wealthy households owned basins, ewers, cloths, soaps, perfumes, and bathing equipment. The difference lies in what counts as a normal wash. You do not begin each day by immersing your entire body in steaming water. A full bath requires a wooden tub, large quantities of water, fuel for heating it, servants to carry it, and enough time to organize the operation. The tub must be brought into a warm chamber, lined or covered for comfort, and filled one bucket at a time. By the time the last bucket arrives, the first has already begun cooling. You then sit in the water while attendants wait nearby, because even bathing does not qualify you for privacy. When you finish, the entire process moves in reverse. The water is carried away, the tub is dried, and several servants privately conclude that your cleanliness has occupied most of their afternoon. Full baths therefore happen, but not casually. They may be taken for comfort, health, ceremony, or particular occasions. Some royal residences have bathing chambers or more elaborate facilities. Henry VIII maintained sophisticated bathing arrangements at certain palaces. As Queen, you have access to comforts beyond those of ordinary households. You still do not have plumbing. Daily cleanliness depends heavily upon linen. The smock worn closest to your skin absorbs sweat and body oils. Changing it regularly removes much of what washing might otherwise address. Fresh linen smells clean, looks clean, and signals refinement. Outer garments are too valuable and complicated to wash frequently, so they are brushed, aired, repaired, and protected from dirt wherever possible. This explains the importance of cuffs, collars, smocks, and other washable layers. Your visible linen tells the court that your household is functioning properly. If it is bright and fresh, you are considered clean. The unseen situation beneath 7 layers of velvet is treated as confidential. Hair requires its own attention. Your attendants comb it carefully, removing tangles, dust, and anything else that has attempted to establish a small independent household. Fine combs can help remove lice and nits. Head coverings protect the hair and keep it arranged, although they also create warm conditions that certain unwanted residents may find encouraging. Perfume assists where water leaves off. Rosewater, lavender, herbs, scented oils, pomanders, and perfumed gloves help create a pleasant personal atmosphere. Sweet-smelling plants may be placed among clothing and linens. These fragrances do not necessarily conceal total neglect. They are part of grooming in a world filled with smoke, damp stone, cooking odours, animals, candles, and hundreds of people sharing enclosed rooms. Then there is the close stool. This is a padded seat containing a removable vessel, an object designed to make ordinary bodily necessity resemble furniture. Trusted servants manage it discreetly. Palace latrines and garderobes exist, but their effectiveness depends upon design, maintenance, and whether anyone remembered that gravity moves waste downward but does not make it disappear. You wash your hands again. Your ladies unfold fresh linen. S remembered that gravity moves scented water is dabbed against your skin. The basin is carried away, and the room begins preparing for the much larger task of dressing you. You are clean by Tudor royal standards. Modern standards have not been invited to inspect the evidence. 12. Getting dressed is a collaborative engineering project. Now you must dress. This is not a private activity completed beside a wardrobe while deciding whether the green gown still fits. It is a scheduled operation involving several women, carefully arranged garments, expensive materials, and enough fastening points to make escape during a fire a matter of genuine planning. You begin with a clean linen smock worn against the skin. It is soft compared with what follows and serves the important purpose of absorbing sweat before it reaches clothing worth more than many servants will earn in years. Stockings are pulled into place and secured. Petticoats follow. Depending upon the decade, your rank, and the fashion currently controlling everyone's judgment, structured layers may be added to shape the body beneath the gown. Early Tudor clothing favours a long, relatively natural line, although natural is being used generously. As the century progresses, bodices become firmer, skirts wider, and the fashionable female body increasingly resembles an expensive architectural feature. A Spanish farthingale may hold the skirt away from your legs in a widening cone. Catherine of Aragon helped popularise Spanish fashions at the English court, although styles changed throughout her lifetime and long after it. Later queens wear increasingly structured gowns over supportive bodies or stiffened bodices that flatten and lengthen the torso. This does not create the extreme narrow waist associated with later Victorian corsetry. It does, however, make bending forward something you perform only after consulting the garment. Next comes the kirtle, which can function as an undergown or as a visible and richly decorated layer beneath the main gown. Its front may display expensive fabric even when the less visible sections are made from something more economical. Tudor wardrobes understand a principle still familiar today: spend the money where the portrait can see it. The outer gown follows. Velvet, satin, silk, damask, cloth of silver, and cloth of gold proclaim wealth before you speak. Fur trims provide warmth and status. Embroidery carries flowers, religious symbols, royal initials, and heraldic devices. Pearls and gemstones may be sewn directly onto fabric, ensuring that even your sleeves possess measurable financial influence. Those sleeves may be detachable. This allows valuable clothing to be altered, combined, repaired, and reused. A new pair of sleeves can transform an older gown without requiring the household to construct the entire arrangement again. Royal wardrobes are lavish, but they are not careless. Garments are inventoried, stored, aired, altered, gifted, and passed between members of the household. Nothing containing several yards of velvet is casually forgotten at the back of a cupboard. Your lady's lace. Pin, tie, smooth, and adjust each layer. One woman holds the gown. Another manages the sleeves. A third checks the neckline. Someone kneels to arrange the skirt while another fastens jewels at your throat. You stand in the centre with your arms slightly raised, contributing moral support. Then comes the headwear. In the early Tudor court, the English gable hood frames the face with a pointed structure that resembles a small roof designed by someone interested in modesty and drainage. The French hood, associated strongly with Anne Boleyn and continental fashion, curves farther back and reveals more of the hair. Both require preparation, pins, veils, and attendants who understand how to secure everything without allowing the entire arrangement to migrate during dinner. Your hair is braided, coiled, smoothed, covered, or partly displayed according to fashion and marital status. Loose hair may appear during particular ceremonies, especially a coronation, but ordinary court life requires greater control. A queen's hair, like her household and her opinions, is expected to remain properly arranged. Jewellery finishes the transformation. Chains, crosses, rings, girdles, brooches, pearls, and stones are selected for beauty and political meaning. A jewel may advertise family loyalty, religious devotion, marital status, or royal authority. Even a personal gift can become public evidence of favour. At last, your attendants step back. You are warm, upright, glittering, and unable to reach several parts of your own body. The fabrics rustle when you move. The jewels catch the light. Your silhouette announces rank before anyone sees your face. Getting dressed has taken a considerable portion of the morning. Fortunately, you now look as though it happened effortlessly. 13. Beauty is pale, expensive, and occasionally poisonous. Let us move to the dressing table. You are now washed, dressed, pinned, laced, and standing beneath enough fabric to survive a minor diplomatic winter. Yet the work is not finished. Your face must now communicate health, youth, virtue, wealth, and royal composure, preferably without revealing that you slept badly and have already received 3 irritating letters from France. A pale complexion is especially desirable among elite Tudor women. Pale skin suggests that you do not labour outdoors, which means your family possesses enough land, servants, and income to protect you from useful employment. A suntan is not a sign of leisure. It suggests fields, gardens, roads, and an unfortunate familiarity with weather. Your attendants therefore protect your face from the sun with veils, hoods, shade, and whatever distance from agricultural activity can reasonably be maintained. Powders and skin preparations may also help create the smooth, light complexion expected at court. Not every Tudor woman coats herself in poison each morning. Cosmetics vary across the century, and surviving recipes do not always reveal how widely particular preparations were used. Many treatments rely upon relatively ordinary ingredients such as rosewater, almond oil, beeswax, herbs, vinegar, egg white, and finely ground powders. These may cleanse, soften, perfume, tighten, or simply create the reassuring impression that something has been done. Other preparations are less comforting. White lead compounds, including the cosmetic later widely known as Venetian ceruse, become associated with elite beauty during the 16th century. Applied to the face, lead creates a striking pale surface and covers scars, discoloration, and signs of illness. It also irritates and damages the skin. Continued exposure may contribute to hair loss, digestive problems, weakness, neurological injury, and a collection of symptoms that no amount of rosewater can persuade to leave. The damaged complexion then requires further coverage. You apply more of the substance responsible for the damage, because the damage is now visible. This is the Tudor version of solving a leaking roof by commissioning a larger tapestry. Elizabeth I becomes especially famous for an intensely controlled public appearance. After surviving smallpox in 1562, she may have used cosmetics to conceal facial scarring, although the exact nature and regularity of her makeup remain debated. Later images present her with an increasingly pale, almost mask-like complexion, bright lips, carefully arranged red hair, and a face that seems untouched by ordinary age. This is not merely vanity. Elizabeth's appearance becomes part of monarchy. She presents herself as constant, healthy, magnificent, and somehow beyond the decay affecting everyone else. The Queen's natural body ages. The royal image politely refuses. Your lips and cheeks may receive colour from preparations made with plant dyes, mineral pigments, or other compounds. Red suggests health and youth, provided it is applied with restraint. Too little, and you appear unwell. Too much, and moralists become concerned that civilization is ending near your mouth. Eyebrows may be shaped, and the hairline can be adjusted to emphasize a high forehead. Earlier Tudor styles frame the face beneath elaborate hoods, while later fashions reveal more hair. Stray hairs are plucked. Hair is smoothed, braided, coiled, or supported with padding and false pieces. Hair colour matters too. Fair or reddish hair can be admired, particularly during Elizabeth's reign, when the Queen's own colouring influences courtly ideals. Some women experiment with washes or dyes, although the results are not always predictable. A preparation promising golden hair may produce dryness, breakage, or a colour best described as politically unfortunate. Your hands also receive attention. Soft, pale hands demonstrate that you do not scrub pots or carry firewood. Scented creams and gloves protect the skin. Perfumed gloves become fashionable luxury objects, imported or presented as valuable gifts. They carry the smell of rose, amber, musk, or herbs into rooms already crowded with bodies, candles, damp wool, and dogs, who have ignored every development in courtly grooming. Jewels frame the finished face. Pearls brighten the skin. A hood or cap controls the hair. Scent is applied to gloves, clothing, and small ornaments. Your attendants inspect you from several angles, adjusting anything that appears too natural. At last, a mirror is brought forward. It may be made from polished metal or backed glass, expensive enough to deserve careful handling and imperfect enough to provide a slightly forgiving reflection. You look pale, composed, youthful, and royal. Your skin has submitted a private complaint. 14. Breakfast arrives after religion. Has had the first word. It is time to eat. Not immediately, of course. You are a Tudor queen, which means even hunger must wait until God, ceremony, and several household officers have completed their morning arrangements. Before the first piece of bread reaches you, there may be private prayers, attendance at chapel, or a brief service conducted by one of your chaplains. The exact form depends upon the year and which branch of Christianity the Crown currently regards as lawful. This is not a minor detail. During the Tudor century, England moves from Roman Catholic worship under Henry VII, through Henry VIII's break with Rome, into more extensive Protestant reform under Edward VI, back toward Catholicism under Mary I, and then into the religious settlement of Elizabeth I. The altar, language, books, vestments, and approved prayers may all change while the palace kitchens continue producing breakfast with admirable theological neutrality. You pray accordingly. Only after religion has taken the first word does food begin to appear. Tudor breakfast is not always the large, formal meal that modern people imagine. Meal times vary according to rank, household custom, health, season, travel, and appetite. Some members of the court may eat a light breakfast early in the morning, while the principal meal of the day, called dinner, often arrives before or around midday. As queen, you can eat when necessary. Royal status has many complications, but being told there is absolutely no bread available is rarely one of them. Your morning meal may include bread, butter, cheese, eggs, cold meat, fish, fruit, preserves, ale, beer, or wine. The precise selection depends upon the day. Church fasting rules remain deeply important, especially before the Reformation and among those who continue observing older practices afterward. On fast days, meat disappears and fish becomes unavoidable. The kitchens know the calendar better than many courtiers know scripture. Bread is central. The finest white bread, made from carefully sifted wheat flour, is reserved for wealthy tables. Darker breads containing rye or coarser grain are common farther down the social scale. Your loaf is pale, soft, and expensive, a quiet reminder that even flour understands hierarchy. Ale or beer may accompany the meal. Water is certainly consumed in Tudor England, despite dramatic claims that nobody dares touch it, but the quality of a local supply can vary. Fermented drinks are familiar, nourishing, and widely available. Wine signals greater expense and often arrives imported from continental Europe. You may begin the morning with diluted wine or ale and consider this entirely ordinary. Tea and coffee are absent. The modern morning has not yet discovered the convenient ritual of holding a hot cup while refusing conversation. Food reaches you through a carefully ordered system. Cooks prepare it in vast palace kitchens filled with open fires, roasting spits, steam, smoke, shouting knives, and servants moving quickly across floors that would concern a modern inspector. Dishes then pass through household officers and serving staff before entering your chamber or dining space. Royal food is guarded because poison is a persistent courtly fear. Formal precautions may include trusted servants overseeing preparation, controlling access, covering dishes, or tasting food and drink. The danger is often exaggerated by rumour, but the anxiety is genuine. A sudden stomach complaint can suggest spoiled meat, ordinary illness, divine judgment, or an assassination attempt, depending upon which explanation best assists the person telling the story. You sit beneath a canopy or in a privileged place that marks your rank. Your attendants remain nearby. Depending upon the setting, you may eat privately with selected companions, or more publicly before members of the household. Even breakfast can become a performance. How much you eat, what you refuse, and whether you appear healthy may be noticed. If you are pregnant, every mouthful acquires political significance. If you have recently been ill, physicians may recommend particular foods according to theories of heat, cold, moisture, and bodily balance. They might prescribe light broth, strengthening meat, spiced wine, or something unpleasant enough to demonstrate professional seriousness. You eat slowly while letters wait, petitioners gather, and court business begins pressing toward the door. The bread is fresh, the fire is warm, the wine is acceptable. For several peaceful minutes, nobody has asked you to produce an heir. Breakfast is therefore a success. 15. The chapel is never only about God. Now let us return to religion. You enter the chapel beneath painted ceilings and candle smoke, surrounded by clergy, attendants, noble women, and enough embroidered fabric to make humility look expensive. The service may be intimate by royal standards, which still means several dozen people know whether you arrived late, looked distracted, or crossed yourself with insufficient conviction. Religion is not a private corner of Tudor life. It shapes the calendar, the household, the law, the language of kingship, and the way everyone explains illness, victory, childbirth, drought, and sudden death. As queen, your beliefs are therefore watched with unusual care. A devotional book on your table can attract more attention than a jewelled necklace, particularly if somebody suspects it was printed in the wrong city. Under Henry VII and during the early reign of Henry VIII, royal worship remains firmly Catholic. You hear Mass in Latin. Priests celebrate at altars surrounded by images, candles, relics, and richly worked cloth. You confess, observe fasts, honour saints, and follow a religious world that seems ancient, stable, and woven into everyday life. Then Henry decides that his marriage requires theological renovation. The break with Rome does not instantly make England Protestant. Henry rejects papal authority and declares himself supreme head of the Church of England, but he retains many traditional beliefs and practices. This creates an atmosphere in which people are ordered to reject one authority without becoming too enthusiastic about rejecting everything else. You must keep up. If you are Anne Boleyn, reform-minded books circulate through your household. You support clergy and scholars sympathetic to evangelical ideas, and your enemies interpret every appointment as evidence that you are personally dismantling Christendom before dinner. If you are Catherine of Aragon, you remain committed to Catholic teaching and to the sacramental validity of your marriage. Your faith supports your resistance because you do not regard the dispute as a difficult family matter. You regard it as a question of truth before God. Your chapel staff matters. Chaplains preach, advise, hear confession, distribute books, and carry ideas into the wider court. Appointing one man rather than another can signal sympathy with reform, traditional religion, or a particular faction. A sermon that seems mildly interesting to you may sound to a nervous counsellor like the opening statement of a coup. Catherine Parr discovers this danger. She is educated, devout, and interested in religious reform. She publishes devotional works and encourages learned discussion, an admirable activity until conservative opponents begin treating her scholarship as heresy. In 1546, a warrant may even have been prepared for her arrest. She survives by persuading Henry that her religious arguments were intended only to distract him from pain and benefit from his superior wisdom. This is theology conducted with excellent survival instincts. Under Edward VI, worship becomes more openly Protestant. English services replace much Latin. Images and altars are removed or altered. Clergy marry. Books change. Then Mary I restores Catholic worship and papal authority, requiring the kingdom to reverse direction with the calm efficiency of a cart being turned around in a narrow lane. Elizabeth I later establishes a Protestant settlement intended to create outward conformity while avoiding endless examination of private belief. It does not end religious division, but it gives officials a framework, and everyone else a fresh set of rules to interpret carefully. Through all these changes, you continue entering the chapel. You kneel when required, stand when required, listen, pray, and remain aware that everyone nearby is observing not only whether you worship, but how. A queen may speak to God in private. The court will still submit its own report. 16. Petitioners, turn your kindness into government. Let us talk about favours. You are queen, which means people assume you can solve almost anything provided they reach you before someone else does. By the time breakfast ends, letters are waiting from widows, noble families, clergy, servants, merchants, scholars, prisoners, and men whose relatives have made what they describe as one regrettable administrative error involving the crown. They ask for offices, pensions, land, pardons, marriages, church positions, legal assistance, protection from creditors, and relief from enemies, who, according to the petition, are both wicked and unusually well connected. Some requests are modest. A former servant needs money. A poor woman seeks help after her husband's death. A scholar asks for support to finish a book nobody outside 3 universities is likely to understand. Others are less restrained. A noble family may want you to persuade the king to grant them an estate, forgive a debt, promote a son, arrange a daughter's marriage, and overlook the recent behaviour of an uncle who has been communicating rather freely with Scotland. All of them describe their loyalty as ancient and unquestionable. You have never heard of most of them. A queen consort does not usually possess the same formal authority as the king, but she has access to him, her own household, lands, income, officers, and considerable social influence. This makes your chamber a place where private kindness can become public policy. If you recommend someone for office, the king may listen. If you write in support of a prisoner, a sentence may be softened. If you sponsor a cleric or scholar, that person gains money and protection. If you arrange a marriage, 2 families acquire new obligations to one another and, inconveniently, to you. This is patronage, and Tudor government depends upon it. There is no modern civil service with anonymous application forms and a cheerful promise to respond within 20 working days. Offices are gained through birth, service, money, reputation, family connection, royal favour, or knowing someone who stands near the person distributing royal favour. You stand very near him. That makes every conversation significant. A courtier may praise your gown and then mention that his nephew has always shown unusual talent for managing customs revenue. A lady may express concern for your health before gently observing that her husband has served faithfully and remains strangely without a suitable appointment. A bishop sends you a devotional book, followed several days later by a request that looks remarkably like the reason the book was sent. Nothing is presented as a transaction. Everything is a transaction. Your ladies help manage the flow. They receive letters, identify urgent cases, and decide which petitioners may approach you. Secretaries prepare summaries. Household officers check whether requests involve property, money, or people already promised to someone else. Even kindness requires administration. You cannot grant every request. Your resources are large but not endless, and favour shown to one family may offend another. If you support too many of your own relatives, enemies accuse you of building a faction. If you support too few, your family concludes that becoming queen has made you selfish. Foreign-born queens face particular suspicion. Catherine of Aragon's Spanish connections were watched carefully, especially when English and Spanish interests differed. Anne of Cleves arrived with continental attendants and diplomatic expectations that did not disappear merely because her marriage became brief. Every gift, appointment, and recommendation could be examined for foreign influence. Your religious choices matter too. Supporting a preacher, translator, convent, school, or scholar may reveal where you stand in England's increasingly dangerous religious divisions. Anne Boleyn used patronage to assist reform-minded clergy and scholars. Catherine Parr supported learning and religious publication. Their generosity was genuine, but it also helped shape networks of influence. Charity is expected of you. You give alms, support poor households, assist women during childbirth, help servants in old age, and provide money for education or religious foundations. These acts strengthen your reputation for mercy and fulfill deeply held Christian obligations. They also remind everyone that royal compassion is part of royal power. By evening, you have read requests, spoken to officers, promised to consider several cases, and quietly decided that one petitioner should never be allowed near you again. Tomorrow, more letters will arrive. You wanted to be kind. You have accidentally become a department of government. 17. Sometimes the queen is left in charge of the kingdom. Now for the part people often forget. You are not merely a jeweled wife sitting beside the throne while men make decisions in rooms with poor ventilation. Under the right circumstances, you may be expected to govern the kingdom yourself. This usually happens when the king leaves England to fight a war, inspect an army, or pursue glory abroad while assuming that someone sensible will remain behind to deal with everything. That someone may be you. The arrangement is called a regency. The king formally delegates authority to you and appoints councillors to assist with government. You receive reports, approve instructions, hear petitions, manage finances, communicate with military commanders, and help maintain order while your husband is away. You are not handed unlimited personal power. Councillors, legal documents, royal instructions, and existing institutions shape what you can do. Yet the responsibility is real. Taxes must be collected. Supplies must reach armies. Local officials must be supervised. Foreign ambassadors must be answered. Rebellion, disease, poor harvests, and Scottish armies do not pause because the king has gone to France. Catherine of Aragon serves as regent in 1513, while Henry VIII campaigns across the Channel. She is pregnant at the time because Tudor government enjoys assigning several major responsibilities at once. Then Scotland invades. James IV leads a large Scottish army into northern England, while Henry is abroad. Catherine helps organise the kingdom's response, communicates with officials, and issues orders in the king's name. English forces under the Earl of Surrey meet the Scots at the Battle of Flodden and win a devastating victory. James is killed along with many Scottish nobles. Catherine writes triumphantly to Henry. According to contemporary reports, she had wanted to send him the dead Scottish king's body as evidence of victory, but the English commanders sent a bloodied piece of his coat instead, which is the Tudor equivalent of attaching supporting documentation. The episode strengthens Catherine's reputation. She has governed during a crisis, supported military preparations, and remained composed while carrying the king's child. Men who might ordinarily lecture a queen about female weakness suddenly discover that weakness can manage wartime administration quite effectively. They do not abandon the theory. They simply avoid mentioning it until Henry returns. Catherine Parr later acts as regent in 1544 when Henry campaigns in France. By then, the king is older, increasingly unwell, and governing a realm divided by religious tension. Catherine works with the council, signs documents, manages correspondence, and helps maintain royal authority during his absence. Her appointment shows the trust Henry places in her judgment. It also reveals how thoroughly she has learned to navigate court politics. She understands administration, religion, diplomacy, and the moods of a husband who has already ended 5 marriages in several different ways. This is useful professional experience. As regent, you must appear authoritative without suggesting that you enjoy authority too much. You act in the king's name. Your seals, letters, and instructions present you as the guardian of his interests rather than an independent rival. Success proves your competence. Excessive independence may inspire nervous discussion when he returns. You therefore rule firmly, while continuously reminding everyone that the absent man remains entirely in charge. The contradiction becomes even sharper when Tudor women inherit the throne themselves. Mary I and Elizabeth I do not govern temporarily for husbands. They rule as sovereign queens. Their authority comes from hereditary right, yet councillors, preachers, and foreign rulers continue debating whether a woman can properly command men. Mary answers by exercising royal power. Elizabeth does the same, while surrounding her authority with carefully chosen language, ceremony, and imagery. Both discover that a king's mistakes are called policy, while a queen's decisions are frequently examined for evidence concerning the general nature of women. For you, Regency offers a glimpse behind the ceremonial curtain. The government is not an abstract crown. It is letters, meetings, accounts, anxious messengers, military reports, local disputes, and councillors who explain a problem at great length before asking what you intend to do about it. You spend the day making decisions that affect thousands of people. When the king returns, everyone congratulates him on the successful government of his kingdom. 18. Your letters carry affection, strategy, and evidence. It is time to answer correspondence. A table has been prepared with paper, ink, quills, sealing wax, and several letters that arrived while you were eating. Some are from relatives. Others come from councillors, ambassadors, bishops, household officers, foreign rulers, and people who begin by praying for your health before requesting land. You cannot reply casually. A royal letter may travel hundreds of miles, pass through several hands, be translated into another language, copied into official records, or quietly opened by someone who was never intended to read it. Every word must survive the journey without becoming more dangerous than when it left. Your secretary may read incoming letters aloud or prepare summaries. You listen for what is said, what is avoided, and what the writer hopes you will understand without forcing them to place it plainly on paper. Court correspondence is rarely direct. A sentence praising the king's wisdom may mean that the writer desperately needs him to change his mind. An inquiry after your health may really be an inquiry about pregnancy. A relative who writes warmly about family affection may be preparing to ask for money before the page is turned. You learn to recognize the shape of the request before it arrives. Some replies are dictated. Others you write yourself. Royal women were expected to communicate with elegance, especially those who had received strong humanist educations. Your handwriting reveals discipline, rank, and emotion, though ideally not too much emotion. Even when angry, frightened, or deeply hurt, you must keep the lines controlled. Catherine of Aragon wrote forcefully in defense of her marriage and her daughter's legitimacy. Her letters combine personal pain, legal argument, religious conviction, and political awareness. She knew that she was not simply writing to a husband. She was creating a record of her position before Europe, the Church, and history. Anne Boleyn's surviving correspondence with Henry VIII offers a different kind of evidence. The letters reveal courtship, expectation, and the careful language of a relationship that was both intimate and politically explosive. A private phrase between lovers could carry consequences for a queen, a marriage, and the religious future of a kingdom. Mary and Elizabeth Tudor became equally skilled at using letters to survive uncertainty. As princesses, both had to write to powerful people while their status shifted around them. They learned to express obedience without surrendering every claim, affection without trusting too freely, and gratitude without promising more than was safe. This is diplomacy conducted one sentence at a time. Sensitive letters may be written in cipher. Symbols replace names or words so that an intercepted message cannot easily be understood. The system is useful, provided the recipient has the key and the secretary has not made a small error that turns France into turnips. Messengers carry your correspondence through rain, mud, bad roads, crowded ports, and territories where rival officials may inspect their baggage. Delivery can take days or weeks. Ships are delayed. Horses fail. Couriers become ill. By the time your answer arrives, the situation that produced the question may already have changed completely. Royal communication is therefore urgent and strangely slow. Your personal letters carry their own complications. You may write tenderly to a child being raised in another household, to a mother across the sea, or to a husband absent on campaign. You ask about health, meals, weather, and ordinary comforts. Yet even affection is shaped by rank. A letter to your daughter may also advise her how to behave before courtiers. A message to your husband may contain concern for his safety, beside a reminder concerning unpaid household expenses. Nothing remains entirely personal for long. Letters can also become evidence. They may be produced during investigations, read aloud before counsellors, or used to prove loyalty, disobedience, intimacy, or treason. A sentence written during one political moment may be examined years later under entirely different conditions. You sand the page to dry the ink. The letter is folded, sealed, and handed to a trusted messenger. You have written with care. History will still read between the lines. 19. A royal progress moves the entire household. Somewhere else. The court is moving. This sounds simple until you remember that the court includes several hundred people. Hundreds of horses, wardrobes full of velvet, portable chapels, kitchens, beds, tapestries, documents, plate, guards, musicians, servants, dogs, and at least one nobleman who has brought far more luggage than his position justifies. A royal progress is not a holiday. It is the government of England lifting itself from one palace and slowly blocking every road to another. Tudor monarchs travel for many reasons. The king may wish to hunt, inspect estates, escape disease, display royal authority, or visit noble households whose owners have made the expensive mistake of appearing prosperous. Moving also gives the royal residences a chance to be cleaned. After hundreds of people have occupied one palace for several weeks, even the monarchy must eventually admit that the building needs air. Preparations begin long before departure. Household officers plan the route and send instructions ahead. Local officials are told when you will arrive, how many people accompany you, what supplies are required, and which roads should be repaired before the royal wagons discover every hole personally. Your belongings are packed into chests and carts. Gowns are folded with cloth between them. Jewels are counted. Silver plate is wrapped. Bedding, cushions, carpets, devotional books, medicines, correspondence, and household records all travel with you. Tapestries may be carried to decorate temporary rooms because a queen cannot be expected to stare at an unfamiliar stone wall without first covering it in expensive fabric. Your bed may travel too. Royal beds are valuable pieces of furniture and powerful symbols of status. The frame, hangings, mattress, curtains, and embroidered coverings must be dismantled, transported, and reassembled. You are not merely moving house. You are moving the bedroom in which foreign ambassadors hope you will conceive the future king. The procession stretches along the road. Guards ride ahead. Officers, nobles, attendants, servants, carts, pack horses, and supply wagons follow. Wheels sink into mud. Harnesses creak. Horses snort. Dust rises in dry weather, while rain turns the route into a long brown argument between royal dignity and the English landscape. You ride on horseback, travel in a litter, or use a carriage depending upon the period, your health, and the condition of the roads. None of these options provides modern suspension. Every rut communicates directly with your spine. Villages prepare to receive you. Bells ring as the royal party approaches. Local officials dress in their finest clothing and deliver speeches that began as 3 respectful sentences before a nervous clerk expanded them into a history of the county. You smile and listen. The population gathers along the road. For many people, this is their only chance to see the Queen in person. They study your gown, your attendants, your horses, and your expression. You represent royal authority made visible, moving through the countryside beneath banners and trumpet calls. The wealthiest and most important hosts may be ordered or encouraged to accommodate the court. A royal visit brings prestige, access, and the possibility of favour. It also brings hundreds of hungry guests. Rooms must be prepared. Food, wine, ale, firewood, candles, fodder, and bedding must be found in enormous quantities. Kitchens work without pause. Servants sleep wherever space remains. The host smiles through the entire experience while watching several years of household income disappear into one elaborate supper. Henry VIII's royal progresses could become tremendous displays of power. Elizabeth I later used summer progresses to show herself to her subjects and receive lavish entertainments from noble hosts. Pageants, speeches, music, artificial forests, classical gods, and symbolic figures appeared to praise the Queen. The host hoped the performance would secure royal favour. The Queen hoped it would end before the weather changed. For you, every new residence means unfamiliar chambers, new servants, public appearances, petitions, feasts, and another carefully managed display of happiness. Your household transforms strange rooms into a recognisable royal world. Hangings go up, plate is arranged, clothing is unpacked, the chapel is prepared, guards take their positions. By evening, the temporary palace feels almost like home. Tomorrow, someone will begin packing it again. 20. Tudor palaces are magnificent until you smell the corner. Let us examine your surroundings. You live in a palace which sounds magnificent because nobody mentions the corridors in February. From the outside, a Tudor royal residence appears designed to convince the world that England is wealthy, orderly, and fully prepared to defeat France whenever France becomes inconvenient. Towers rise above courtyards, chimneys crowd the roofline, banners move in the wind, windows glitter in the sunlight, at least where glass has been installed and recently cleaned. Inside, the effect is equally impressive. Walls are covered with tapestries showing battles, saints, forests, hunting scenes, and classical figures who appear much warmer than you feel. Painted ceilings display royal badges and heraldic symbols. Carved screens divide halls. Cushions, carpets, embroidered cloths, silver vessels, and polished furniture remind every visitor that the crown has access to extraordinary wealth. Then a door opens, and a draft crosses the room with military confidence. Tudor palaces are built from stone, brick, timber, plaster, and a persistent belief that an enormous fireplace will eventually solve everything. It will not. The fire warms the people directly in front of it. Everyone else occupies a cooler political region of the chamber. You learn to position yourself carefully. The rooms are often large, with high ceilings that allow heat to rise and enjoy itself somewhere far above the human population. Thick curtains and wall hangings help reduce drafts. Beds are enclosed by heavy fabric. Fur, wool, velvet, and multiple layers of clothing perform most of the actual heating work. Summer presents a different problem. Rooms become crowded, warm, and heavy with the smell of bodies, candles, damp fabric, food, smoke, dogs, and rushes underfoot. Windows can be opened, but fresh air also brings insects, noise, and the possibility that someone outside will hear a conversation intended to remain treasonously private. The floors vary according to the room. Important chambers may contain carpets, woven mats, boards, tiles, or polished stone. Rushes and rush matting are used in other spaces. Contrary to the most dramatic stories, elite households do not simply leave the same rotting vegetation on the floor for several generations. Rushes are replaced and floors cleaned. Still, a palace containing hundreds of people produces dirt faster than servants can remove it. Mud enters on boots, ash escapes from fires, wax drips from candles. Food falls during meals, dogs behave like dogs. Servants sweep, scrub, carry, beat, brush, and replace things throughout the day, creating the appearance that royal life naturally remains clean. It does not. The palace kitchens form a separate climate. Fires burn for hours. Meat turns on spits. Sauces boil in large pots. Bread bakes. Servants hurry through smoke and steam while cooks shout instructions over the noise. The heat can be overwhelming, particularly during preparations for a feast. Several corridors away, you are still cold. Water must be carried from wells, conduits, cisterns, or nearby sources. A palace requires vast quantities for cooking, washing, brewing, cleaning, animals, and the occasional royal bath that consumes the working day of everyone asked to fill it. Waste presents its own challenge. Garderobes and latrines are built into many royal residences. Some empty into pits, drains, or channels. Larger palaces may possess systems that use gravity or flowing water to carry waste away. These are impressive by Tudor standards, and still capable of producing smells that rise through the building with complete disregard for rank. Henry VIII had sophisticated sanitary arrangements installed at Hampton Court, including communal facilities for members of the household. Yet no system works perfectly when hundreds of people use it, and maintenance depends upon men carrying buckets through narrow passages. Close stools remain available in private chambers. Servants remove the vessels discreetly and dispose of the contents. The entire process is treated with solemn silence, because monarchy depends partly upon the shared decision not to imagine the king or queen doing anything ordinary. Animals add another layer. Horses fill the stables. Hunting dogs occupy yards and chambers. Small dogs may sit beside noble women, sleep on cushions, and receive better meals than many subjects. Falcons, hawks, and other creatures pass through the wider court. The palace is alive, crowded, beautiful, smoky, damp, noisy, and constantly being repaired. By candlelight, with the tapestries glowing and musicians playing somewhere beyond the gallery, it looks like the centre of the world. Just avoid breathing deeply near the garderobe. 21. Dinner is a performance with several dead animals. It is dinner, and subtlety has not been invited. The principal meal of the Tudor day often arrives around late morning or midday, although royal schedules remain flexible enough to let hunger wait for ceremony. By the time you enter the dining chamber, the kitchens have already spent hours roasting, boiling, baking, chopping, straining, seasoning, and attempting to move an alarming quantity of food through corridors before it becomes cold. Your place is unmistakable. You sit beneath a canopy of estate, raised above much of the company, and surrounded by symbols reminding everyone that this is not merely a meal, it is monarchy eating in public. The arrangement of the room reflects rank. The most important guests sit nearest you. Lesser courtiers occupy progressively less distinguished positions, where they can still see the royal table but must accept that the better dishes may have completed several journeys before reaching them. Seating is politics expressed through furniture. Before eating, water is brought for washing hands. This is practical as well as ceremonial because forks are not yet standard equipment at English tables. You have a knife, a spoon, and your fingers. Diners are expected to handle food neatly, use the correct fingers, and avoid behaving as though the roast has challenged them personally. Servants enter carrying dishes in carefully ordered waves. There may be beef, mutton, venison, pork, poultry, game birds, pies, fish, custards, vegetables, fruit, bread, sauces, and sweet preparations. The exact menu depends upon the season, the religious calendar, and the scale of the occasion. On fasting days, meat is forbidden and fish assumes command. This does not necessarily make the meal modest. Wealthy households can respond to religious restraint with sturgeon, salmon, pike, eel, oysters, and enough butter to make abstinence feel surprisingly well-funded. Meat dominates ordinary feast days because it displays wealth. Hunting rights belong largely to the elite, so serving venison announces access to land, parks, servants, animals, and enough political confidence to kill something for entertainment before eating it beneath a tapestry. Not every dish is intended for you personally. Tudor meals often use a system in which many dishes are placed on the table together. You select from what is nearest, request something be passed, or rely upon servants to bring suitable portions. The visual abundance matters almost as much as the food itself. A sparse table suggests weakness. A crowded one suggests power. Spices such as pepper, cinnamon, cloves, mace, ginger, and saffron appear in elite cooking. They are expensive imported goods and therefore signs of status. They are not simply used to disguise rotten meat, despite the enduring modern story. Anyone wealthy enough to purchase large quantities of spice can generally afford meat that has not begun negotiating its own departure. Food preservation remains difficult. Meat is salted, smoked, dried, pickled, or consumed quickly. Game may be hung to tenderize and develop flavor, requiring judgment from cooks who understand the difference between mature and alarming. There is no refrigeration, no germ theory, and no official arriving with a clipboard to inspect the chopping boards. The kitchens are skilled, disciplined, and dangerous. Your food passes through several officers before reaching you. Dishes may be covered and supervised. A servant may taste food or drink as part of royal security. Poison is a genuine fear at court. Though rumour is often more common than proof, any stomach complaint can become suspicious if the patient is important and enough enemies are standing nearby. You begin eating while attendants watch. Your appetite is observed because it may reveal health, illness, pregnancy, grief, or displeasure. Refusing a dish can become a topic of conversation. Eating heartily reassures the household, unless a physician has instructed you to appear delicate. Between courses, elaborate sugar sculptures, marchpane figures, or decorative subtleties may appear. These can represent castles, saints, heraldic beasts, biblical scenes, or flattering messages about the dynasty. The kitchen has transformed dessert into propaganda. Music plays, servants move, courtiers calculate. Several animals have died so that everyone can understand where they rank. You finish the meal beneath the canopy. The leftovers begin another journey through the household, descending gradually through servants and dependents until almost nothing remains. Royal abundance has performed beautifully. The roast peacock has contributed all it can. 22. Court entertainment is work wearing feathers. After dinner comes entertainment. You might imagine this is the point when everyone relaxes. The food has been cleared, the wine has softened the room, and several courtiers are beginning to look as though they would happily sit near a fire and discuss nothing of importance. Unfortunately, you are at the Tudor court. Entertainment is not separate from politics. It is politics wearing silk, carrying a lute, and pretending to be a woodland nymph. Musicians begin playing while servants rearrange the chamber. There may be dancing, cards, singing, poetry, plays, acrobatics, hunting, tournaments, pageants, or elaborate masks in which courtiers appear dressed as gods, virtues, shepherds, foreign princes, or natural forces that have somehow developed excellent tailoring. As queen, you are expected to participate with enthusiasm. You dance because grace is evidence of good breeding. You listen because attention is a form of favour. You laugh because failing to laugh may suggest displeasure, illness, religious concern, marital tension, or a developing diplomatic position concerning Spain. One quiet expression can keep the court busy for days. Dancing is especially important. Tudor court dances require memory, balance, controlled movement, and the ability to navigate a crowded floor while wearing clothing that has been designed without consulting the knees. Some dances are lively. Others are slow and formal, allowing couples to move through carefully arranged steps beneath the observation of everyone who matters. Who dances with whom is noticed. If you invite a courtier, his family celebrates. If you refuse him, his enemies become interested. If the king dances repeatedly with one of your ladies, you may continue smiling while half the room begins creating a theory. Your face remains calm. This is one of queenship's most advanced skills. Music fills much of court life. Henry VIII played instruments, composed music, and valued musical accomplishment. Later, Tudor courts continued supporting singers, instrumentalists, and composers. You may play the lute, virginals, or another instrument, depending upon your education and taste. Performing well demonstrates refinement. Performing poorly is still applauded because you are queen, though the applause may contain a subtle element of relief when the piece ends. Plays provide another form of entertainment. Companies perform religious stories, classical subjects, comedies, moral lessons, and political allegories. A harmless scene involving a proud king, a dishonest counsellor, and a suffering wife can become suddenly uncomfortable if anyone in the room resembles the characters too closely. The actors continue. The audience becomes very interested in the floor. Masks and pageants are even more elaborate. Painted scenery, music, costumes, machinery, poetry, and symbolic figures combine to flatter the monarchy. Wisdom praises you. Peace welcomes your marriage. Fertility appears wearing flowers and delivers a speech that makes everyone glance toward your stomach. The meaning is rarely subtle. At tournaments, the king and noblemen display courage, strength, wealth, and excellent armour. Jousting is dangerous, but it remains popular because the Tudor court has not yet discovered a safer method of demonstrating masculine confidence before several thousand spectators. You watch from a richly decorated gallery. Trumpets sound. Horses thunder across the ground. Lances break, courtiers cheer. Somewhere beneath the ceremony, physicians prepare for the possibility that entertainment may shortly require surgery. Henry VIII was seriously injured during a joust in 1536. The accident left him unconscious for a time, and may have worsened the chronic pain and health problems that marked his later years. The tournament continued to symbolise royal strength, although the king's body had submitted a different report. Hunting offers similar opportunities for display. You ride through parks and forests with attendants, dogs, horses, and enough equipment to make the pursuit of one deer resemble a military campaign. Hunting demonstrates control over land and animals while giving the court a reason to leave the palace. Even quieter amusements involve calculation. At cards, money changes hands. During poetry readings, patrons are praised. In conversation, alliances are tested. A private joke can establish intimacy. A public compliment can elevate a family. You are entertained for several hours. You are also observed, evaluated, flattered, petitioned, and gently manoeuvred. At last the musicians finish. The final dance ends. Candles have burned low, and your cheeks ache from maintaining the correct expression. Court entertainment has been delightful. You may now rest from enjoying yourself. 23. Your ladies are friends, servants, and an intelligence service. Let us return to the women around you. They are always nearby. They help you dress, accompany you through galleries, sit beside you during meals, travel with you on progress, share your devotions, and remain within calling distance when the palace settles into darkness. Some have known you since childhood. Others arrived because their families placed them close to you with the precision of men positioning pieces on a gaming board. Officially, they are your attendants. In practice, they are companions, witnesses, messengers, political connections, and a highly efficient information network wearing embroidered sleeves. The most senior women may serve as ladies of the bedchamber, or gentlewomen of the privy chamber, depending upon the period and household. Their rank grants them access to your private rooms and your physical person. They may help arrange your clothing, handle jewels, carry personal objects, and remain beside you during moments that would be private in almost any modern life. They see you before the court does. They know whether you slept badly. They notice when your appetite changes, when your hands tremble, and when you have been crying. They know whether the king visited your chamber and how long he remained. If your monthly cycle is delayed, your closest attendants may understand the possible meaning before several members of the council do. Several members of the council will still attempt to find out before lunch. This knowledge gives your ladies influence. Courtiers who cannot approach you directly may approach them. A nobleman sends compliments to a woman in your household and then gently mentions that his brother deserves an office. A diplomat cultivates one of your attendants because she might reveal whether you favour a particular marriage alliance. A relative asks whether the queen appeared cheerful after speaking with the king. The questions always sound harmless. They rarely are. Your ladies may carry messages between you and the outside court. Some correspondence passes openly through secretaries. Other words travel quietly through trusted women who can enter spaces from which men are excluded. A message delivered while adjusting a sleeve attracts less attention than one carried by a royal messenger under guard. Women's chambers, therefore, become important political spaces. Men may dominate the council room, but information moves through bedchambers, galleries, chapels, gardens, and sewing circles with remarkable speed. A group of women working on embroidery can discuss marriages, religion, appointments, illness, and the king's mood while appearing to do nothing more dangerous than complete a border of flowers. This is government with needles. Friendship can still be genuine. Court life is lonely, especially if you arrived from abroad and lost many of the attendants who accompanied you. Your ladies provide familiar voices and small moments of ordinary life. You play cards, share music, read aloud, exchange jokes, and complain quietly about ceremonies that lasted much longer than any reasonable person expected. Yet friendship at court is never protected from politics. A lady may belong to a family opposed to your interests. She may repeat something carelessly. She may be questioned by counsellors. She may become close to the king, which creates an entirely different difficulty. Several of Henry VIII's wives had served in the households of earlier queens. Anne Boleyn attended Catherine of Aragon. Jane Seymour later served both Catherine and Anne. Catherine Howard served Anne of Cleves. The Queen's household could therefore contain the next Queen. This does not create a restful working environment. You must decide whom to trust, whom to reward, and whom to remove. Dismissing a lady can insult her entire family. Keeping her may allow information to continue leaking from your rooms. A woman who seems quiet may be discreet. She may also simply be collecting material. Religion adds another layer. Your attendants may share your beliefs, bring you books, recommend preachers, or connect you to wider reforming or conservative networks. During periods of religious tension, the women around you can become evidence of your sympathies. One forbidden text, discovered in the wrong chamber, may transform domestic companionship into an investigation. Still, these women remain the people closest to you. They support you during pregnancy, sit through illness, accompany you into confinement, and stand nearby when the court turns cold. When your position weakens, some disappear quickly. Others remain loyal despite the risk. By evening, you know which lady made you laugh, which one carried a difficult message, and which one asked 3 questions too many. You are surrounded by friends. You simply cannot be certain whose friends they are. 24. The marriage bed belongs to the dynasty. Now we come to the royal marriage bed. It stands beneath embroidered hangings in one of the most guarded rooms in the palace. The mattress is layered with wool, feathers, and expensive fabric. Curtains block drafts, contain warmth, and create the faint impression of privacy. This impression does not survive contact with the Tudor court. For an ordinary married couple, the bed may belong mainly to the 2 people sleeping in it. Yours belongs to the dynasty, the church, the council, several foreign ambassadors, and anyone waiting for news of an heir. Even the wedding night may begin publicly. Important marriages can include a ceremonial bedding. Courtiers, clergy, relatives, and attendants escort the newly married couple toward the chamber. The bed is blessed, jokes are made, stockings may be thrown, wine may be offered. Everyone behaves with the cheerful determination of people making an intimate situation considerably less comfortable. Eventually, most of them leave. The word most is doing useful work. Trusted servants remain nearby. Your ladies occupy adjoining rooms. Guards stand outside. The king's attendants know when he enters and when he departs. Servants handle the sheets, tend the fire, and bring whatever is required afterward. Nobody needs to witness the marriage act itself, but enough people observe its surrounding details to construct a reliable court bulletin by morning. This matters because consummation can affect whether the marriage is legally valid. Under church law, consent creates marriage, but physical union can strengthen its permanence and become crucial if anyone later challenges it. A royal bedroom can therefore become a courtroom years after the candles have burned out. Catherine of Aragon's first marriage to Arthur, Prince of Wales, provides the most famous Tudor example. After Arthur died, Catherine maintained that their marriage had never been consummated. This allowed her later marriage to his brother Henry to proceed with papal approval. Decades later, Henry argued that marrying his brother's widow had violated biblical law, and that the marriage was therefore cursed and invalid. Catherine insisted that she had entered her marriage to Henry lawfully, and that her account of the first marriage was true. The question of what happened in one bedroom when 2 young people were married became part of the struggle that separated England from papal authority. No pressure then. Your own relationship with the king may contain affection, desire, friendship, duty, fear, or several of these at once. You may genuinely love him. He may treat you tenderly. He may also understand the marriage bed primarily as the place where legitimate sons are expected to appear. If months pass without pregnancy, attention increases. Physicians offer advice. Chaplains prescribe prayer. Courtiers blame timing, health, diet, divine displeasure, or you. The king's fertility is rarely questioned with equal enthusiasm. Tudor medicine possesses many theories and a remarkable instinct for locating responsibility in the queen's chambers. The timing of royal visits becomes public knowledge. If the king spends several nights with you, ambassadors report hopeful signs. If he stays away, the same ambassadors begin discussing the stability of the marriage. A closed door can alter foreign policy. Your attendants know when your monthly cycle begins. They prepare linen, observe changes in appetite, and watch for nausea. The first suggestion of pregnancy may move through the palace before you are certain yourself. Your body has become a source of intelligence. You must also share the emotional space of marriage with the wider court. The king may have mistresses. He may favour one of your own attendants. You are expected to respond with dignity, because open jealousy can be described as disorderly, while his behaviour is explained as something men occasionally do when burdened by government. You lie beneath the embroidered canopy while footsteps fade beyond the door. The room is warm, The candles are low. For a few hours the palace appears quiet. Yet even here, surrounded by curtains and darkness, you are performing the central duty assigned to a Tudor queen. The bed is yours. The consequences belong to everyone. 25. Your monthly cycle becomes international information. Let us discuss something the court rarely records plainly, but watches constantly. Your monthly cycle is private in theory. In practice, it is observed by attendants, interpreted by physicians, discussed by counsellors, and reported by ambassadors who have somehow made your missing period part of foreign policy. The women closest to you know when your linen changes. They help you wash, dress, and prepare for bed. They notice whether bleeding has begun, whether it is delayed, and whether you seem tired, uncomfortable, or unusually interested in salted fish before breakfast. None of this requires spying in the dramatic sense. It simply requires living within several feet of you at almost every hour. Royal privacy is defeated by laundry. A delayed cycle may suggest pregnancy, although Tudor medicine cannot confirm this quickly or reliably. Physicians look for changes in appetite, complexion, sleep, mood, breast tenderness, nausea, and the gradual swelling of the abdomen. Some signs are useful, others are interpreted with the confidence of men who have never personally experienced them. They may examine urine for colour, clarity, sediment, and other qualities believed to reveal the condition of the body. A physician can study a flask beside a window, nod thoughtfully, and announce that the signs are encouraging. Whether the signs belong to pregnancy, illness, diet, or yesterday's wine remains a detail for later. You wait. The court does not wait quietly. If the king has been visiting your chamber and your cycle is late, rumours begin almost at once. A lady tells her husband that you have appeared tired. Her husband mentions it to a counsellor. The counsellor speaks cautiously to an ambassador. The ambassador sends a dispatch abroad explaining that the queen is believed to be with child, though certainty would be premature. By the time you feel the first movement, 3 European courts may already have discussed the possible godparents. Pregnancy matters because succession matters. A Tudor queen is expected to produce legitimate children, preferably sons, and every month without conception becomes part of a larger political calculation. If the king lacks a secure male heir, counsellors worry about rival claimants, disputed inheritance, foreign marriages, and the possibility that England may return to the dynastic conflict everyone remembers with unusual clarity. Your body is therefore not allowed an ordinary delay. Stress, illness, poor nutrition, travel, grief, or natural variation can alter the cycle. Tudor observers understand some of this, but the desire for an heir encourages hopeful interpretation. Nausea becomes evidence. Faintness becomes evidence. Refusing wine becomes very strong evidence, unless you simply dislike the wine, which is not considered sufficiently important. False pregnancy can be devastating. Mary I appeared pregnant in 1554, and again later, showing signs that convinced much of the court. Preparations were made for a royal birth. Letters announced hopeful news. When no child arrived, the disappointment became personal, political, and painfully public. You cannot quietly correct the misunderstanding. The nursery may already be prepared. If your cycle arrives after several hopeful weeks, the news spreads more discreetly but no less efficiently. Attendants understand that there will be no child that month. The king may be told. Physicians offer advice. Chaplains recommend prayer. Someone suggests a new diet involving strengthening broths, warmer spices, and several ingredients that have done nothing to deserve responsibility for the succession. The king's health and fertility receive less public examination. Even when he has failed to produce surviving sons across several pregnancies, suspicion falls more naturally upon the queen. She may be described as barren, unlucky, unhealthy, or somehow lacking divine favour. The husband remains magnificently theoretical. You learn to recognize the silence surrounding your attendants. Hope produces one kind of careful behaviour. Disappointment produces another. Nobody wishes to upset you, yet everyone needs to know what your body has decided. You continue through chapel, meals, audiences, and entertainment while the court watches for signs. A hand placed briefly against your stomach can become news. You are living inside the most closely monitored calendar in Europe. 26. Pregnancy is announced before anyone can be certain. You may be pregnant. This is exciting news, which is why the court immediately begins behaving as though uncertainty is a personal insult. Your monthly cycle has not arrived. You feel tired. Certain foods suddenly seem unpleasant, while others acquire an importance entirely out of proportion to their nutritional value. Your ladies notice that you have eaten less at dinner and rested your hand against your stomach during chapel. By evening, 3 people are hopeful. By morning, half the palace knows. There is no reliable pregnancy test. No physician can produce a clear answer within minutes and send you back to your ordinary day. Instead, everyone observes, interprets, and waits. A Tudor physician may examine your urine, ask about your appetite, study your complexion, and consider changes in sleep, mood, digestion, and the breasts. He may discuss the balance of heat and moisture within your body. He may also speak with such confidence that you briefly forget he cannot see inside you. The attendants who know you best may offer more practical judgment. They have witnessed other pregnancies. They understand the ordinary changes that occur in women's bodies. Midwives and experienced matrons often possess knowledge built through years of observation, although learned physicians do not always acknowledge this with enthusiasm. For now, the signs are promising. The court begins using cautious language. You are believed to be with child. There is hope of increase. The Queen shows good signs. Nobody declares certainty, but preparations begin in the particular Tudor fashion of refusing to admit that preparations have begun. Prayers are offered for your health. Chaplains select appropriate passages. Physicians recommend rest, moderate exercise, suitable food, and the avoidance of powerful emotions, as though the Tudor court has ever allowed anyone to avoid powerful emotions for more than an afternoon. Your diet receives attention. You may be encouraged to eat nourishing meats, broths, eggs, bread, fruit, and carefully selected spices. Foods believed too hot, too cold, too dry, or too moist may be limited according to medical theory. Wine might be diluted. Strong smells are avoided if they disturb you. Someone will suggest a remedy involving herbs. Someone else will object to the herbs. Both will be certain. The king is informed. If he has not already heard through the household network, his reaction matters. A hopeful husband may become more attentive, send gifts, order prayers, or speak warmly of the future. Courtiers observe all of this because royal affection becomes easier to measure when it arrives in jewels. Foreign ambassadors send reports home. The possible child may affect treaties, marriages, and the succession. If the baby is a boy, England may gain the secure male heir everyone has been requesting with increasing impatience. If the baby is a girl, she may still become a valuable dynastic match, though several counsellors will smile as though the order was only partly correct. Weeks pass. You wait for quickening, the first clearly felt movement of the child. This usually occurs several months into pregnancy and can provide stronger confirmation that something is growing within you. Until then, hope remains mixed with anxiety. Bodies can mislead. Illness, stress, interrupted cycles, tumours, and other conditions may produce signs resembling pregnancy. Tudor medicine cannot always distinguish between them. Even experienced women can be mistaken. Mary I endured this publicly. In 1554, she appeared to show convincing signs of pregnancy. Her abdomen enlarged, her periods stopped, and preparations for childbirth advanced. Official letters were drafted. A nursery was made ready. Reports circulated that the child was expected. No child came. The emotional pain was immense, but it could not remain personal. Her disappointment became a political event observed by subjects, counsellors, enemies, and foreign rulers. You know this possibility exists, even if nobody wishes to mention it. Still, your clothing is loosened. Your daily routine becomes gentler. The women around you become protective. Every stumble, chill, journey, and difficult piece of news is treated as a potential threat to the unborn heir. You are not yet certain there is a child. The child already has a political future. 27. Lying in places you inside a darkened velvet world. As the birth approaches, your world begins to shrink. The galleries, council chambers, gardens, chapels, and crowded dining halls recede behind a carefully guarded door. You enter what is known as lying in, a period of confinement intended to protect you during the final weeks of pregnancy and prepare you for childbirth. This is not confinement in the modern sense of being told to rest, drink water, and avoid answering work messages. It is a formal withdrawal from ordinary court life into a chamber arranged according to custom, medical theory, religion, and the firm belief that fresh air has become personally dangerous. The room is transformed before you enter. Windows are covered with shutters, curtains, or heavy hangings. Tapestries are drawn across the walls to block drafts. Doors are kept closed. Fires burn steadily. The atmosphere becomes warm, dim, and enclosed, designed to resemble the safety of the womb. This is comforting in theory. In practice, it means several women spending weeks together in a room filled with candle smoke, fire heat, heavy fabric, perfume, food, anxiety, and very little moving air. Everyone assures you this is healthy. The furnishings are chosen carefully. Your bed is placed at the centre of the chamber, surrounded by rich curtains that provide warmth and privacy. Cushions, carpets, stools, devotional books, and comforting objects are arranged nearby. Sharp or disturbing images may be removed. Paintings showing violence, suffering, or alarming biblical events are considered unsuitable for a pregnant woman whose imagination is believed capable of affecting the child. The walls may instead display gentle religious scenes, flowers, or calm landscapes. Nothing should frighten you. This rule does not apply to the people discussing childbirth within hearing distance. Your household changes as well. Men are largely excluded from the inner chamber. The king may visit before confinement begins or communicate through trusted attendants, but the lying in space belongs mainly to women. Your ladies, midwives, nurses, and experienced matrons surround you. Some have given birth themselves, others have assisted at many deliveries. They understand the rhythms of pregnancy through observation and experience, even if learned physicians remain uncertain whether this knowledge counts because it was acquired without Latin. The midwife becomes one of the most important people in your world. She checks your condition, prepares supplies, and watches for signs that labour is beginning. Cloths, oils, herbs, basins, warm water, swaddling bands, and instruments are placed ready. Prayers and charms may also be present, depending upon the period and the religious rules currently in force. Before the Reformation, relics, holy girdles, and prayers to saints might offer comfort. Later, Protestant authorities remove or condemn many older practices, although private habits do not disappear simply because officials have produced a new book of instructions. When danger approaches, people tend to remember every prayer they have ever heard. Your daily routine becomes quiet and repetitive. You eat carefully selected foods, rest, pray, sew, listen to reading, and speak with the women around you. Physicians advise against anger, fear, loud noise, unpleasant sights, excessive movement, and anything else the Tudor court normally provides without being asked. News reaches you in controlled portions. Political disputes, foreign threats, and family tensions may be softened before entering the chamber. The official aim is to keep you calm. The unofficial aim is to prevent you from hearing that half the palace has begun placing bets on whether the child will be a boy. Outside the room, preparations continue. A royal nursery is made ready. Cradles, linen, clothing, and attendants wait. Letters announcing the birth may be drafted in advance, with careful spaces left for the child's sex and health. Chapels prepare Thanksgiving services. Messengers stand ready to ride. Inside, time moves slowly. Every pain attracts attention. Every unusual sensation is examined. Your ladies exchange glances when you rise too quickly or pause beside the bed. Nobody wishes to alarm you, so they become alarmed very quietly. At night, the curtains close around you. Firelight moves across the tapestry. Women sleep nearby, and the palace continues beyond the sealed door. You have been placed in warmth, darkness, and luxury. The most dangerous work of your life is about to begin. 28. Childbirth is the most dangerous duty you perform. Now labour begins. At first, the pain may be uncertain, a tightening across the abdomen, a pressure low in the back, something that passes, returns, and gradually becomes difficult to dismiss as an unfortunate consequence of supper. Your midwife watches you closely. The women in the chamber lower their voices. Warm water is prepared, cloths are gathered, and someone adds fresh wood to the fire, making the sealed room even warmer than it already was. There is no hospital to visit. The hospital has effectively been constructed around your bed. You remain inside the lying-in chamber with your midwife, ladies, nurses, and experienced matrons. Men are normally kept outside unless the labour becomes dangerously complicated. Even the king waits elsewhere, receiving reports through attendants who have learned to describe alarming developments without sounding alarmed. Labour may continue for hours. It may continue for days. You walk when you can, supported by women on either side. You kneel, sit, lean against the bed, or use a birthing stool. Tudor women were not always expected to give birth lying flat. Midwives understood that movement and upright positions could assist labour, though nobody used phrases such as evidence-based care because the evidence was standing beside the bed with her sleeves rolled up. The midwife examines you with her hands and judges the child's position through experience. She listens to your breathing, watches the rhythm of the pains, and tries to decide whether the birth is progressing normally. There is no reliable way to monitor the child's heartbeat. There is no scan. There is no machine producing reassuring lines across a screen. There are only signs, touch, memory, and prayer. Herbs, oils, warmed cloths, and drinks may be offered. Some remedies soothe. Others are based upon medical theories involving heat, cold, moisture, and the need to encourage the body to open. Physicians might recommend substances intended to strengthen contractions or calm distress, although dosage is uncertain and several preparations are considerably more confident than useful. Pain relief is extremely limited. Wine or ale may dull the edges. Herbal mixtures may offer some comfort. Prayer provides emotional strength. None of this resembles modern anesthesia. You feel everything. The women encourage you. They rub your back, wipe your face, change the linen, and hold your hands when the pains become overwhelming. Court rank briefly loses some of its importance. You may be the most powerful woman in the kingdom, but childbirth reduces the room to breath, blood, heat, fear, and the next contraction. Outside, the palace waits for news of a son. Inside, you are trying to survive. If the child is positioned badly, the danger increases rapidly. A breech birth may sometimes be managed by a skilled midwife, but obstructed labour can become fatal. Surgeons possess instruments, yet intervention is crude, rare, and often attempted only when the mother or child is already in grave danger. Number 3. Caesarean surgery is not a realistic means of saving a living Tudor mother. It is associated mainly with attempts to remove a child after the mother has died. Bleeding cannot be replaced through transfusion. Infection cannot be treated with antibiotics. Convulsions, prolonged labour, retained tissue, fever, or a torn birth passage can turn a successful delivery into a crisis hours or days later. Jane Seymour gave birth to Prince Edward in 1537 after a long and difficult labour. The kingdom celebrated the son Henry VIII had wanted for decades. Jane appeared well enough to participate in some of the celebrations from her chamber, but her condition worsened. She died less than 2 weeks after the birth, probably from complications related to childbirth. The bells that announced the prince were followed by bells for his mother. At last the child emerges. The midwife receives it, clears the mouth, ties and cuts the cord, and examines the tiny body for signs of life. For one terrible moment, the room listens. Then comes a cry. Everyone breathes again. The baby is wrapped, washed according to custom, and carried close enough for you to see. You are exhausted, trembling, and surrounded by stained linen that no royal portrait will ever include. You have completed the most important duty assigned to a Tudor queen. Now you must survive the congratulations. 29. A daughter is loved and politically apologised for. The child is born, and the first question arrives almost immediately. Is it a boy? The midwife knows before anyone else. Your ladies know a moment later. The room, still heavy with heat, blood, sweat, candle smoke and prayer, pauses around the answer. If the child is a daughter, relief and disappointment enter together, which is an unfair burden to place upon someone who has been alive for less than a minute. You may love her at once. She is warm, breathing, and astonishingly small. Her fingers close around yours. To you, she is not a failed prince. She is your child. The court, however, has prepared a different calculation. A daughter can inherit titles, carry claims, strengthen alliances, and one day become a queen. She can be educated, politically useful, and deeply cherished by her family. Yet in Tudor England, where memories of civil war remain close and the succession feels permanently fragile, a male heir is regarded as safer. This is not because every woman is thought incapable. England will eventually be ruled by Mary I and Elizabeth I. It is because a queen regnant raises difficult questions about marriage, obedience, foreign influence, military authority, and whether powerful men can accept instructions from a woman without first writing several anxious pamphlets. Your daughter is therefore celebrated, but with a slight adjustment to the volume. Bells ring, prayers of thanksgiving are offered, gifts arrive, messengers ride out carrying news that the queen has been safely delivered of a princess. The word safely receives genuine emphasis because your survival is not assumed. The word princess is treated with dignity. Behind it sits the unspoken hope that next time the announcement will contain a prince. Anne Boleyn gave birth to Elizabeth in 1533. The child was healthy and born into a marriage Henry had transformed the religious and political order of England to secure. The court had confidently expected a boy. Instead, England received a daughter whose future importance nobody in the birthing chamber could yet understand. Elizabeth was not neglected. She received a royal household, fine clothing, servants, tutors, and the dignity appropriate to the king's daughter. Yet her birth did not secure Anne's position in the way a son might have done. More pregnancies followed. No surviving boy arrived. Catherine of Aragon knew the same sorrow. She experienced several pregnancies, but only Mary survived infancy. Catherine loved and educated her daughter with extraordinary care. Mary was intelligent, accomplished, and royal in every sense. Still, Henry's desire for a male heir helped turn their marriage into a national crisis. You understand the danger beneath the congratulations. Your husband may kiss you and praise the child. He may be genuinely pleased. He may also glance toward the future and calculate how soon another pregnancy might begin. Physicians advise rest, while counselors quietly hope your recovery will be efficient. Meanwhile, your daughter is carried to the nursery. A wet nurse may feed her. Nurses, laundresses, and servants begin the work of keeping her alive. Her cradle is lined with fine fabric. Her clothing is embroidered. Her household accounts begin almost before she can focus her eyes. You may not raise her closely in the modern sense. Royal children often live in separate households, cared for by attendants and seen by their parents during arranged visits. You receive reports concerning her health, appetite, sleep, teeth, and progress. A minor cough can cause alarm. Infant mortality does not respect royal blood. As she grows, tutors arrive. She learns languages, music, religion, dancing, and the careful manners expected of someone whose marriage may one day serve the same diplomatic purpose that shaped yours. For now, however, she sleeps. The court wanted a son. History may have received a queen. 30. A son changes the atmosphere of the entire court. Suppose the child is a boy. The room changes before anyone has finished cleaning it. A son is not merely a healthy infant with a loud cry and an alarming amount of hair. He is the answer to years of prayer, anxiety, and strained conversations about the succession. The midwife announces the news. Your ladies begin to weep. And somewhere beyond the chamber door, a messenger starts running as though the kingdom has personally caught fire. The king is told first, then the council, then the bells begin. Across the palace, doors open. Courtiers who have spent months speaking cautiously now congratulate one another as though they personally assisted with the delivery. Chaplains prepare Thanksgiving services. Bonfires are lit. Wine may be distributed. Alms are given to the poor, and every poet within riding distance begins searching for a comparison involving lions, roses, and heaven. Your son has been alive for an hour. He already has a public relations department. The relief is understandable. Tudor England remembers disputed claims and the damage caused when several powerful families believe the crown belongs to them. A legitimate male heir appears to offer a clean succession. He can inherit without forcing councillors to debate whether a woman may rule or whether every ambitious cousin should purchase armour. For you, the change is immediate. Courtiers bow more deeply. Relatives who were merely tolerated become valuable. Families that questioned your influence discover that they have always admired your judgment. Your household fills with gifts and people expressing concern for your recovery, while hoping you will remember their loyalty later. You have produced the prince. Everyone would now like a small share of the achievement. The child is baptized quickly because infant mortality is high, and salvation is not something Tudor parents postpone. Nobles carry him beneath a rich canopy. Candles, music, heraldry, and carefully chosen godparents turn baptism into another statement about the dynasty. You may not attend. After childbirth you remain in confinement, recovering and waiting for churching, the ceremony that marks your return to worship and public life. You hear reports from your ladies. The prince behaved well, which generally means he cried at an acceptable moment and did not become ill during the procession. His nursery is already operating like a separate court. A wet nurse feeds him. Nurses, laundresses, physicians, Guards, chaplains, and household officers surround him. His cradle is lined with costly fabric. His clothing is listed in inventories. His rooms are kept warm and protected from anyone who appears unwell. This does not guarantee safety. Royal children die from the same infections, fevers, and breathing problems that threaten every Tudor child. Wealth provides better food, warmer rooms, and constant attendance, but it cannot produce antibiotics or explain why a healthy baby suddenly weakens. The court therefore watches him almost as closely as it watched your pregnancy. A cough creates concern. A rash produces consultations. A poor appetite becomes council-level information. Nurses report his sleep. Physicians examine him. And ambassadors send updates abroad. The child cannot yet sit upright, but France would appreciate an account of his digestion. Edward, born to Jane Seymour in 1537, was the son Henry VIII had waited decades to receive. His birth secured Jane's place in royal memory, though she died soon afterward. Edward became king at 9 and died at 15. The precious male succession proved less permanent than the celebrations had promised. For now, none of that is known. The bells continue. Courtiers drink to the prince's health. The king speaks of the future with confidence. You lie in the darkened chamber, exhausted and sore, while the kingdom celebrates the small sleeping child nearby. You have given England an heir. England has already begun worrying about him. 31. The king's affection becomes a branch of government. Let us talk about love. At the Tudor court, love is never permitted to remain a simple feeling between two people. The moment the king looks at you warmly across a chamber, everyone nearby begins calculating what it means for land, offices, religion, foreign policy, and the future location of several ambitious relatives. If the king favours you, the entire court feels it. He visits your rooms more often. Gifts arrive. You receive jewels, gowns, estates, or money. Your relatives gain access. Petitioners gather near your attendants. Courtiers who previously struggled to remember your name suddenly praise your wisdom, beauty, and unusually refined understanding of government. The king may genuinely love you. Henry VIII could be charming, attentive, generous, and intensely affectionate. During courtship, he wrote passionate letters, gave gifts, arranged private meetings, and pursued women with the focus of a man who had decided that desire was now a matter of national urgency. The difficulty is that royal affection creates power. If you whisper a recommendation, someone may receive an office. If you speak warmly of a preacher, his career may rise. If you express concern for a prisoner, a sentence may change. Your family benefits from proximity to you, and their enemies become nervous. Anne Boleyn's rise demonstrates this clearly. As Henry's attention settled upon her, her father, brother, and wider family advanced at court. Supporters of religious reform found opportunities within her circle. Her marriage became connected to England's break with Rome, though she did not control every force unleashed in her name. The king's love had become a political faction. This means your marriage is observed with exhausting care. Ambassadors report whether Henry dines with you, visits your chamber, gives you gifts, or speaks kindly in public. If he laughs at something you say, the laugh may appear in correspondence sent across Europe. If he does not visit, that is reported too. You notice changes before anyone speaks openly. His letters become shorter, meals together grow less frequent. He spends more time hunting or visiting another household. Your attendants become careful. Courtiers who once crowded your chamber discover urgent business elsewhere. Nobody tells you that the king's affection is fading. They simply begin treating you as though it already has. A new woman may attract his attention. She could be one of your own ladies, because the Queen's household places young noblewomen near the king. With remarkable regularity, Anne Boleyn served Catherine of Aragon. Jane Seymour later served both Catherine and Anne. Catherine Howard attended Anne of Cleves. Your attendants are therefore companions, servants, and a possible waiting list. You are expected to respond with dignity. Open jealousy can be described as unreasonable or disruptive. The king's behaviour, meanwhile, is explained as natural, temporary, or somehow required by the burden of monarchy. You continue smiling during dinner while half the room studies your face. The danger is not merely emotional. If royal affection disappears, your political protection weakens. Enemies speak more boldly. Old accusations return. Your fertility, religion, family, and behaviour are reconsidered. Qualities once praised become suspicious. Confidence becomes arrogance. Intelligence becomes interference. Silence becomes guilt. Anne Boleyn experienced this transformation with terrible speed. Once celebrated as the woman for whom Henry challenged papal authority, she later faced accusations of adultery and treason that most historians regard with profound doubt. She was executed in 1536. Anne of Cleves took a different path. When Henry rejected the marriage, she accepted an annulment and received property, income, and the title of the king's beloved sister. Her willingness to cooperate helped her survive comfortably. This is Tudor romance at its most practical. You learn to read the king's moods, the posture of his counsellors, and the silence of your own household. Affection may still be real, but it exists beside authority so enormous that disappointment can become legislation. The king once held your hand beneath candlelight. Now several lawyers are waiting outside. 32. Falling from favour can become a legal procedure. At last, we reach the truth no crown can conceal. Your position is powerful, magnificent, and alarmingly dependent upon one man continuing to recognise it. When the king's affection fades, the change does not remain inside the marriage. It moves outward through the palace. Visits stop, gifts become less frequent, your invitations narrow. Counsellors who once bowed with devoted attention begin discovering urgent business in another corridor. Your household feels the shift before anyone explains it. Servants become nervous. Ladies receive quiet advice from their families. Petitioners disappear. People who built careers upon your favour now begin remembering that they always had reservations about you. Nobody announces that you are falling. The court simply steps away from where you are likely to land. For Catherine of Aragon, the process is long, public, and painfully formal. Henry VIII argues that their marriage is invalid because she had previously married his brother Arthur. Catherine refuses to accept this. She insists that her first marriage was never consummated and that her union with Henry is lawful before God. The dispute moves through church courts, diplomatic negotiations, legal opinions, biblical arguments, and several years of increasingly exhausted correspondence. Catherine is separated from Henry, removed from court, and denied contact with their daughter Mary. She continues calling herself Queen. Henry's government calls her Princess Dowager of Wales. The disagreement is therefore not merely about a title. It is about whether the king can redefine a woman's entire life by issuing new stationery. Anne Boleyn's fall is much faster. In 1536, after miscarriages and the failure to produce a surviving son, she loses Henry's support. Men associated with her are arrested. Anne is taken to the Tower of London and accused of adultery with several men, including her own brother, as well as plotting the king's death. The charges are sensational. The evidence is deeply questionable. Some alleged encounters appear to have been impossible because Anne was elsewhere at the stated time. Yet the trials proceed before men whose futures depend upon understanding what result the king expects. Anne is convicted. Her marriage is annulled shortly before her execution, creating the peculiar legal arrangement in which she is condemned for adultery against a man whom the law has just declared was never truly her husband. Tudor law has solved the contradiction by declining to feel embarrassed. Anne of Cleves faces rejection rather than prosecution. Henry dislikes the marriage and seeks a way out. Anne cooperates with the annulment, accepting arguments involving an earlier betrothal and the lack of consummation. In return, she receives estates, income, and the title of the king's beloved sister. She remains in England, attends court on occasion, and outlives Henry and his other wives. Her survival is not cowardice. It is political intelligence practiced under conditions where refusing might have produced a much shorter settlement. Catherine Howard is less fortunate. Accusations emerge concerning relationships before her marriage and alleged misconduct afterward. She is stripped of her title, confined, and eventually executed in 1542. Parliament uses an act of attainder, allowing punishment without the ordinary process of a full trial. The law moves around her like a wall being constructed while she is still inside the room. Catherine Parr nearly faces danger through religion. Conservative enemies accuse her of holding reformist beliefs. An arrest warrant is reportedly prepared. She survives by presenting her theological discussions with Henry as an attempt to entertain him and learn from his wisdom. The king accepts this explanation. His wisdom has conveniently saved her from his warrant. If you fall from favour, your household may be dissolved, jewels are removed, servants are dismissed, doors that once opened automatically remain closed. your title disappears from official speech. Even your marriage can be rewritten by lawyers who previously defended it. You may be sent to a distant residence, confined in a palace, taken to the tower, or persuaded to sign documents agreeing that your former life was legally mistaken. The crown still exists. It simply belongs to the next woman now.